Lily Thomas was just a 10-year-old girl living in a small town in Texas, but in a matter of hours, her name would be known all around the world. It all started with a short, 2-minute video that went viral. In the video, Lily stood in front of a simple camera, holding a small model of a machine that she claimed could recycle energy from industrial waste to help reduce global pollution. "Hi, my name is Lily," she said in a soft, almost shy voice, her eyes focused on the ground. "I know the world has a lot of problems with pollution, and I want to help, even if it's just a little bit. This is a model I came up with that recycles energy from trash. It could help reduce emissions, save energy, and help the earth stop being so polluted." Lily's words, though simple and tentative, were filled with a quiet confidence, as if she were a scientist presenting a groundbreaking idea. But instead of receiving praise, the video was quickly mocked. "What is this? A little kid pretending to solve world problems," one commenter said. "She must be in elementary school. This is probably just a kid's fantasy," another added. And there were many more comments like that. But amidst the ridicule, there were a few people who didn't focus on her age. They focused on her idea. Some shared the video and commented that, while she was young, her approach to the problem seemed fresh and worth considering. Little did anyone know, in the sea of comments, there was one person who saw something more in Lily, a person who had the power to change everything for her. What would you do if you suddenly lost everything, and no one was there to help? Lily Thomas had no idea that in a world full of laughter and doubt, there was one person who would see something extraordinary in her that no one else could. A week passed, and the video slowly faded into the background. Lily sat in her living room, one hand holding a book, the other scribbling notes on a notepad. Though she loved studying inventions and tinkering with ideas, she rarely had anyone to share her passion with. Today felt like just another ordinary day. Her mom, her older sister, and a few friends from school didn't even know about the video she'd uploaded. Life for Lily continued, quietly and unremarkably. Then, one late afternoon, while Lily's mom was preparing dinner, an email popped up in her inbox. The subject line read, "Elon Musk, Dear Mrs. Thomas," the email began. "My name is Elon Musk, and I'm the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX. I just watched your daughter Lily's video on YouTube. I was really impressed by the idea she presented about recycling energy from industrial waste. It's a fantastic concept, and I would love to discuss it further. If you and Lily are open to it, I would like to arrange a meeting." Lily's mom read and reread the email, her hands trembling. "Elon Musk? That can't be real," she muttered under her breath. Elon Musk was the founder of Tesla and SpaceX, the genius behind some of the most innovative companies in the world. How could he be emailing her daughter? Lily looked up when she heard her mom's voice. "Mom, what's wrong? Is everything okay?" Her mom turned around, still in shock, and said, "Lily, you're not going to believe this, but Elon Musk just emailed me." Lily blinked, not understanding. "Elon Musk? The guy who started Tesla and SpaceX?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes. He wants to meet with you, to talk about your idea," her mom said, still trying to process what was happening. Lily's mouth went dry. The person she had seen on TV, the man who had made rockets and electric cars, was actually reaching out to her. Could this be real? What would you do if you were in Lily's shoes? Would you take the opportunity to change your life forever, or stay hidden in the safety of your comfort zone? Let us know what you think in the comments below. This was just the beginning. Lily's life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. But would she be able to rise to the challenge? Could a shy 10-year-old really make an impact on the world? The answers would start to unfold in the chapters that followed. Lily Thomas had always been different from the other kids. She wasn't the loudest in class, or the one with the most friends. In fact, she was often considered shy and reserved, someone who kept to herself. But what others didn't see was her brilliant mind, a mind that was always at work, even when she wasn't speaking. Lily's passion for science had started early. When she was just 5, her father, who was a mechanic, taught her how to take apart old gadgets and put them back together. It was through this that Lily first discovered her fascination with machines. While other kids were out playing with dolls or riding bikes, Lily spent her time in her father's workshop, observing the way things worked. Tragedy struck when Lily was 5 years old. Her father died in a car accident, leaving her mother, Maria, to raise her alone. The loss was devastating for both of them, but it only strengthened Lily's resolve to understand the world in a way that no one else could. She threw herself into her studies, and though she wasn't the most social child, she found comfort in the pages of books and the inner workings of machines. Her mother, Maria, was a hard-working woman who held down 2 jobs to support their small family. Maria often wished Lily would spend more time with other kids, go outside, and experience life. But Lily's quiet nature made it hard for her to connect with her peers. At school, she was a quiet observer, always lost in thought. Teachers noticed her intelligence, but never expected much from her socially. They assumed she would grow up to be a quiet, introverted genius, the kind of person who worked behind the scenes and never sought the limelight. Despite this, Lily's mom never stopped encouraging her. Maria knew that Lily had something special, something that went beyond what any test or report card could show. But she also worried. She worried that Lily's brilliance might isolate her even further, turning her into someone who would never truly connect with the world around her. Maria dreamed of a future where Lily could use her intelligence to help people, but she also hoped Lily would one day find her voice. At home, Lily and her mom had a close bond. It was just the two of them, supporting each other through life's ups and downs. They were each other's best friends. But Lily couldn't help but feel like there was something missing. She wanted more than just the quiet comfort of home. She wanted to make a difference in the world, even if she wasn't sure how. Then came the day Lily created the video. It wasn't a grand plan. Lily wasn't trying to make headlines, nor did she expect anyone to notice. She was just tinkering with an idea in her room one afternoon, like she had so many times before. The idea came to her in a flash. What if she could create a machine that could recycle industrial waste into usable energy? Lily had always been frustrated by the growing amount of pollution she saw around her, and after years of reading and experimenting, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she could do something about it. So she built the prototype. It wasn't perfect. In fact, it was pretty rudimentary. But it worked, at least on a small scale. The machine used a process that Lily had invented by combining principles of recycling and renewable energy, something she had read about in her spare time. It was a solution that could make a real difference in the world, even if no one would take it seriously. But Lily believed in it. And after some encouragement from her mom, she decided to share it with the world. She recorded a short video explaining how it worked, showing off the machine she had built in her room. Her hands were shaking when she hit the upload button, and she immediately regretted it, fearing the ridicule. But she couldn't turn back now. What she didn't expect was that someone would actually notice. Why did Elon Musk decide to reach out? What did he see in Lily's video that others missed? It was easy for most people to dismiss Lily as just a smart kid with an idea that would never work. But Elon Musk, a man who had spent his life working on the cutting edge of technology, saw something different. He saw a spark. He saw a young mind that wasn't just dreaming, she was doing. But why would he, of all people, want to help a 10-year-old girl from a small town? Lily had no idea what the future held. She didn't know what it would mean for her to meet Elon Musk, or how her life might change. All she knew was that the email from him felt like a chance to turn her quiet little world into something much bigger. But there was one thing Lily wasn't sure of. Would she be able to handle it? If you were in Lily's shoes, would you be excited or terrified by the chance to meet Elon Musk? What would you do if someone like him believed in your ideas? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. As Lily sat in her room, staring at the email, her heart raced. She had no idea what would come next, but she knew this was the start of something huge. The journey that lay ahead would push her in ways she never imagined, and it would force her to confront not only the world's biggest challenges, but also her own fears and insecurities. And so, the adventure was just beginning. The day after Lily's mom received the email from Elon Musk, everything seemed to spiral out of control. What had started as a quiet moment of excitement quickly turned into something far bigger than either of them had expected. Lily sat at the kitchen table, her cereal untouched, her mind racing. The email was real. It wasn't a scam or a joke. Elon Musk, the man behind Tesla and SpaceX, the visionary who was literally trying to colonize Mars, wanted to meet her. But what did that really mean? Could she trust it? What if she messed up? What if the whole thing was too much for her? A flood of doubts poured into her mind, drowning out the excitement. "Lily, honey, are you okay?" Maria asked, glancing over at her daughter as she sipped her coffee. Lily's mom had always been the rock in their family, steady and strong, but even she seemed unsure of what was happening. Lily looked up, her eyes wide with anxiety. I don't know, Mom. What if I'm not ready for this? What if I mess everything up?" Maria set her coffee down and walked over to Lily. She knelt down beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Sweetheart, you're smart. You've always been. And this isn't about being perfect. It's about trying. If Elon Musk sees something in you, then you're already on the right path. But remember, it's okay to be nervous. You don't have to have all the answers right now. But what if I look stupid? What if I don't know what to say?" Lily's voice wavered as she spoke. Maria smiled softly, brushing a lock of hair behind Lily's ear. "Everyone feels that way sometimes. The important thing is, you have something valuable to offer. If this is what you want, I'll be there to support you every step of the way. And you don't have to face it alone." Lily nodded, but the gnawing uncertainty in her chest didn't go away. She had always been a quiet, introspective child, someone who preferred to solve problems by herself in her own time, without others looking over her shoulder. The thought of meeting Elon Musk, of stepping into the spotlight, made her feel vulnerable. What if she couldn't live up to the expectations? What if she was just a little girl playing pretend, and the world would see right through her? The next few days were a blur. After confirming that she was willing to meet, Lily and her mom worked out the logistics. Elon's team arranged a video call, given that they were on opposite coasts of the United States, and it was the most practical option. Maria helped Lily prepare, but the pressure was mounting. Lily spent hours researching Elon Musk, his companies, and anything related to renewable energy. She knew her idea was solid, but there was still a part of her that doubted whether it was truly world-changing in the way that Elon Musk's ventures had been. After all, she was just a 10-year-old girl. What could she possibly bring to the table that he hadn't already heard from the world's leading experts? When the day of the video call arrived, Lily could hardly contain her nerves. She sat in front of her laptop, fingers trembling as she clicked the link to join the meeting. Her heart pounded in her chest as she adjusted the angle of her camera, making sure her room, cluttered with science books, parts from various projects, and half-built machines, looked presentable. "Mom, I can't do this," Lily whispered, her voice barely audible. Maria was in the living room, pacing nervously herself, but she walked back into the room when she heard her daughter's distress. "You can, sweetie. You've got this. Just be yourself." Lily nodded slowly, trying to calm her breath. It wasn't like she hadn't talked to people before, but this was different. This was Elon Musk, a man whose name was synonymous with innovation and success. What did he see in her? Was she ready to live up to the hype? The screen flickered, and a moment later, Elon Musk's face appeared in the video call. He was sitting in a simple office, his famous tousled hair and casual demeanor making him seem approachable, despite the fact that he was one of the most famous entrepreneurs on the planet. "Hi, Lily," Elon said, his tone warm but professional. "It's great to finally meet you." Lily froze. For a moment, she couldn't find her words. She had expected this moment to feel like a dream, like she would wake up any second. But it was real. Elon Musk was speaking directly to her. "Hi," she finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. She adjusted in her seat, trying to steady herself. "Thank you for reaching out." Elon smiled, sensing her nervousness but not pressing it. "I watched your video, and I have to say, I was really impressed by your idea. It's not every day that I see someone your age thinking about solving such big problems. I think you might be onto something important." Lily's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "He actually thinks my idea is important." He continued, "I'm curious to learn more about your project. Can you walk me through how it works?" Lily's mind cleared for a moment as she began explaining the concept of her recycling energy machine, the very same model she'd built in her room. She wasn't sure what she expected from this meeting, but as she spoke about her creation, something inside her clicked. This wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about sharing her passion, her ideas. Elon didn't need a perfect prototype. He just needed to understand the potential. But the further Lily went into her explanation, the more she realized just how much she still had to learn. She fumbled over a few technical details, unsure if she was explaining things correctly. Her hands shook as she pointed to diagrams on her screen, hoping that Elon could follow her train of thought. Elon listened carefully, nodding, but Lily couldn't shake the feeling that she was falling short. She wasn't prepared enough. She wasn't ready for this. When she finished speaking, Elon took a moment before responding. "You're onto something, Lily. I can see that. But there are a lot of challenges ahead. And I think you might need some help from experts to refine the idea and make it viable. This could really change the way we think about energy, but there's a lot of work to do." Lily felt a lump form in her throat. It wasn't a rejection, but it wasn't exactly the affirmation she had hoped for either. This could change the world. But was it enough? Was she enough? Lily was left with more questions than answers. Elon had given her hope, but the weight of what lay ahead was starting to sink in. This wasn't just about building a machine. It was about changing the world, and that was a much bigger challenge than she had ever imagined. But one thing was certain. Lily was determined to rise to the occasion. She might not have all the answers yet, but she wasn't going to let fear stop her from trying. After the video call with Elon Musk, Lily couldn't sleep. Her mind was racing, running over every moment, every word he'd said. She kept thinking about his last sentence, "There's a lot of work to do." At first, it had seemed like a simple observation, but now it felt like a challenge she wasn't sure she was ready for. Her mom, Maria, had been incredibly supportive throughout the whole process. She had made sure Lily was prepared for the call and was quick to reassure her afterward. "He believes in you," Maria had said. "That means you're on the right track." But in the stillness of her room, with only the dim light from her desk lamp illuminating her workspace, Lily couldn't help but doubt herself. Could she actually pull this off? The machine she had designed was rudimentary. It was a start, a small idea that could one day become something monumental. But the technical aspects, the scientific principles behind it, were complex. She had built the basic model, but there were so many pieces missing. She wasn't sure how to scale it, how to make it viable for real-world application. Her mom, ever the rock, noticed the anxiety creeping into Lily's behavior. "You're going to do great, sweetie. Remember, you're not alone in this. And even if you don't have all the answers, that's okay. You're here because of your potential, and you're already a step ahead of most." Lily smiled weakly, though the nerves still gnawed at her. She had spent so many years working in the quiet of her room, creating in isolation, that the idea of stepping into a massive company like Tesla felt overwhelming. But there was no turning back now. This was her moment. The flight to California felt like it took forever. As the plane descended into Los Angeles, Lily looked out the window at the sprawling city below. She could feel the energy of the place, the hustle, the drive, the innovation. This was where it all happened. She felt small in comparison. When Lily arrived at the Tesla headquarters, she was greeted by a small team who would help her get settled. They were friendly, warm, but there was an underlying professionalism that made Lily feel like an outsider. She was just a kid, and they were experts. What if they didn't take her seriously? What if they laughed at her ideas? Her thoughts swirled with doubt as she was led into the conference room where Elon Musk was waiting. He stood up as she entered, a warm smile on his face. "Lily, so glad you could make it. Welcome to Tesla," he said, offering a handshake. Lily took his hand, feeling both awestruck and nervous. "Thank you for having me," she replied softly. Elon gestured to the room. "This is where the magic happens," he said with a grin. "But today, it's all about you. I want to see what you've got, what you've been working on, and how we can help you take it to the next level." Lily swallowed hard. She had prepared for this, but now that she was here, the reality of it all hit her like a freight train. This was Elon Musk, the man who had changed the world, and now he was looking to her for answers. Lily was introduced to the team of engineers and scientists who would be working with her. They were all experts in their fields, and for a moment, Lily felt overwhelmed. But as the meeting went on, she started to relax. These weren't just people looking to critique her. They were there to support her, to help her grow, to teach her the things she didn't know. The engineers were fascinated by her idea, impressed with her ingenuity. They asked questions, offering constructive feedback, pointing out areas where the design could be refined. Instead of feeling defeated by their critiques, Lily felt inspired. With each suggestion, her idea grew stronger. With each challenge, she felt her confidence build. It was a whirlwind of activity. The team worked with her day and night, pushing her to think in new ways, to refine her design and overcome obstacles. For the first time, Lily didn't feel alone. She was surrounded by people who believed in her, who saw the potential of her work. But the deeper she got into the project, the more she realized how much more she had to learn. The journey wasn't easy. It was filled with long hours, technical challenges, and moments of self-doubt. But each time Lily felt like giving up, she thought back to that first email from Elon, and how it all started with a simple idea. She wasn't just a shy 10-year-old anymore. She was a part of something much bigger. If you were in Lily's shoes, how would you feel working with world-class experts on something you created? Would you feel empowered or intimidated? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Lily was on the journey of a lifetime, and though the road ahead was still uncertain, she was no longer afraid. She had taken the first step, and she knew that no matter what happened, she would keep going. Because in the world of innovation, failure was just another step toward success. It had been weeks since Lily had arrived at Tesla, and her life was no longer a quiet, isolated existence. Now, she was part of a team that worked tirelessly to bring her idea to life. Every day was a new challenge, and with each new hurdle, Lily's confidence grew. But there was still one overwhelming question that lingered at the back of her mind. Would she be able to make it work? Despite the support of Elon and his team, Lily often found herself doubting her abilities. Every time she encountered a problem, a part of her whispered, "What if you're not cut out for this? What if this isn't the breakthrough you think it is?" It was during one of the late-night sessions, when Lily was hunched over her desk, running through calculations on a dry erase board, that the moment of truth came. They had made significant progress on the prototype of the energy recycling machine. The concept had been refined, the design improved, and the team was now ready to test it in a real-world setting. It was time to see if the machine could actually work on a scale that would have an impact. The energy industry was full of promises. Green energy solutions, sustainable technologies, but very few of them actually lived up to their hype. The pressure to succeed weighed heavily on Lily's shoulders. The stakes had become too high. If the prototype didn't work, it wouldn't just be a failure for her. It would be a failure for Elon Musk, Tesla, and the dream of a cleaner, more sustainable world. Lily stood in front of the prototype in the testing facility, surrounded by Tesla's top engineers. Elon stood off to the side, watching her with a calm but expectant look on his face. The machine sat in front of her, humming softly, awaiting the final test. Everything had been calibrated, every detail double-checked. It was all down to this moment. "Ready?" Elon asked, his voice low but full of anticipation. Lily nodded, though she didn't feel ready. She had spent so many sleepless nights working on the machine, tweaking and adjusting the components, but it was one thing to build something in theory and quite another to see it in action. She reached forward, her fingers trembling slightly, and pressed the button that would activate the system. For a moment, there was only silence. The machine's gears whirred, lights flickered, and then, nothing. The room was filled with the quiet sound of disappointment. Lily's heart sank. She had worked so hard for this. So had the team. But now, it looked like everything had fallen apart. The dream of revolutionizing energy, of making a real difference, it seemed impossible. Elon stepped forward, his expression unreadable. He didn't look angry or frustrated, just focused. "Let's take a look at what went wrong," he said. Lily felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. She had tried to make everything perfect, but here she was, standing in front of the very people who had put their trust in her, and the machine had failed. She stepped aside, letting the engineers take over. They began examining the system, making adjustments, running diagnostics, while Elon turned to her. "Lily," he said, "this is what it's all about. This is the process. Failures like this don't mean the end. They're just part of the journey." Lily felt a lump form in her throat. She didn't feel like it was part of the journey. It felt like a dead end. "But what if it never works?" she asked softly. "What if my idea isn't good enough?" Elon placed a hand on her shoulder, looking her in the eye. "I've failed more times than I can count, but each time, I learned something new. And each time, I got closer to success. The key is not to give up when it gets tough. What you've created here, Lily, is something worth pursuing. There's no such thing as failure unless you stop trying." Lily swallowed, taking in his words. It was easy to feel like a failure when things didn't go as planned. But Elon was right. It wasn't about perfection. It was about persistence. The engineers worked through the night, adjusting the machine's wiring and recalibrating the power sources. They found a small malfunction in one of the sensors, a glitch that had caused the system to shut down prematurely. By morning, they were ready to try again. This time, when the button was pressed, the machine hummed to life. The lights flickered, then steadied. The system activated, running seamlessly, converting waste into energy at a scale they hadn't thought possible. The room erupted into cheers. Lily stood frozen, staring at the machine as it worked. The weight of what had just happened began to sink in. It worked. The team gathered around her, clapping her on the back, congratulating her on her incredible work. But as she stood there, speechless, the enormity of the moment washed over her. This wasn't just a small project. This was a breakthrough that could change the world. And it was all because of Lily's vision, her idea. Later that day, after the celebration had died down, Elon pulled Lily aside. "You did something amazing today," he said, his tone sincere. "You didn't give up. That's what separates the dreamers from the doers." Lily felt a rush of pride, but it was mixed with disbelief. "I didn't do it alone," she replied. "The team, you, helped me make it work." Elon smiled. "But it all started with you. And that's something very special. This is just the beginning. We're going to take this technology further. And you, Lily, are going to be a part of something bigger than you ever imagined." Lily stood there, feeling like she was on top of the world. She had gone from a quiet, shy girl with a dream to a young inventor who had just made history. And though she knew the road ahead would still be filled with challenges, she no longer felt afraid. She was ready. Lily's journey wasn't over, but she had proven something important to herself. She was capable of achieving greatness. It was a lesson that would stay with her for the rest of her life. And as the world began to take notice of her work, Lily knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. The future was hers to shape. The months that followed were nothing short of a whirlwind for Lily. What had started as a simple idea, a machine in her bedroom designed to convert waste into usable energy, had evolved into something far grander. Thanks to her breakthrough at Tesla, the energy recycling technology was now in the final stages of development, ready for large-scale testing and implementation. Lily had been thrust into the public eye, with news outlets and tech blogs covering her every move. She was interviewed by major networks, her story highlighted as an example of the power of young minds to shape the future. But despite all the attention, Lily remained the same quiet, introspective girl she had always been. The media buzz and the constant praise made her uncomfortable. She never liked being the center of attention, but she couldn't deny the impact she was having. In the months after the successful test of her prototype, Lily worked side by side with some of the brightest engineers and scientists in the world, learning from them, soaking up knowledge, and refining her invention. Tesla, with its resources and expertise, was giving her the tools she needed to turn her dream into a global reality. The machine that had started as an idea scribbled on a piece of paper was now close to being a working solution for energy production on a massive scale. But with all the progress came the pressure. As the project moved forward, expectations mounted. Investors, government agencies, and environmental organizations were watching closely, all eager to see if Lily's technology could really live up to the promises it had made. Could it truly change the way the world thought about energy? One evening, as she sat in her office at Tesla's headquarters, staring at the blueprints spread out before her, Lily couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. The project had become so much bigger than she had ever imagined. The stakes were high, and the responsibility was heavy. The world was looking to her, expecting a solution that could transform global energy systems. "Lily, you all right?" Elon's voice broke her out of her thoughts. He was standing in the doorway of her office, watching her with his usual calm demeanor. Lily looked up, startled. Yeah, I'm fine. Just thinking. Elon smiled and walked over to her desk, taking a seat across from her. I know that look. You're feeling the weight of it, aren't you? Lily nodded. It's just a lot, you know? I never expected it to get this big. I thought I was just building a machine that could recycle energy, but now I feel like I'm carrying the future of energy on my shoulders. Elon leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him. I get it, but let me tell you something. You don't have to carry it all alone. You're part of a team. You've already proven that you're capable of incredible things, but this is a journey, a long one, and sometimes the road gets tough. Lily listened carefully, taking in his words. She had always thought of herself as the one who had to solve the problems on her own. She had built her machine alone, researched on her own, even taken the first steps with little guidance. But now she was learning that even the greatest innovators didn't do it alone. You've got a team of experts, Lily, people who believe in you and your idea. You've already done something amazing, and that's just the beginning. Lily's gaze dropped to the blueprints again, her mind replaying everything that had brought her here. She thought about her childhood, her quiet moments of tinkering in her room, the feeling of working alone for hours, always feeling different from the other kids at school. And then she thought about the call from Elon, the meeting at Tesla, and all the people who had believed in her when she wasn't sure if she believed in herself. She was no longer alone. The road ahead was still uncertain, but Lily was ready. Ready to face the challenges that would come with taking her invention to the global stage. Ready to take on the responsibility of shaping a better future. And ready to accept that she didn't have to be perfect to make a difference. A few weeks later, the day came when the machine was ready for its biggest test yet. It was time to demonstrate the technology to world leaders, investors, and environmental organizations. All the people who had been waiting to see if Lily's invention could live up to the hype. The event took place at Tesla's massive energy facility in California, a futuristic campus full of solar panels, electric cars, and cutting-edge technology. The atmosphere was tense, the weight of expectation palpable. In the crowd were CEOs, politicians, and influential figures in the renewable energy industry. The eyes of the world were on Lily. Elon stood beside her as they prepared to unveil the machine for the final demonstration. "You ready?" he asked, his voice steady. Lily glanced out at the crowd. For a moment, she felt that familiar surge of anxiety. But then she took a deep breath and nodded. She had done the work. She had built the machine. And now, it was time to share it with the world. The crowd fell silent as Lily approached the stage. The machine, now polished and refined, sat in the center of the room. She glanced back at Elon, who gave her an encouraging nod. With one final breath, she pressed the button. The machine whirred to life. Lights flickered, systems activated, and for a moment, the room was filled with a hum of energy. The machine worked flawlessly, converting waste materials into usable power, demonstrating its potential to revolutionize energy production on a massive scale. A murmur of awe spread through the crowd, followed by applause. Lily stood there, her heart racing, overwhelmed by the significance of the moment. Later that night, after the event had ended, Lily found herself on a balcony overlooking the Tesla campus. The cool California air brushed against her skin as she gazed out at the sea of lights below. Elon appeared beside her, leaning against the railing. "You did it, Lily. You really did it." Lily looked up at him, her face breaking into a smile. "I couldn't have done it without you, without the team, without everyone who believed in me." Elon turned to her, his gaze softening. "You believed in yourself first. That's the most important part. You saw a problem, and you created a solution. The rest? That's just details." Lily laughed softly. "I still can't believe it. Sometimes, it feels like I'm dreaming." Elon nodded. "It's a dream that's coming true. And now you're not just dreaming. You're changing the world." Lily smiled, feeling the weight of his words sink in. She had come so far from the shy 10-year-old who had once wondered if she was enough. Now, she was someone who had made a tangible impact on the future, and there was still so much more to come. Lily's journey was far from over, but she had learned one of the most important lessons of all. The power of perseverance, of believing in yourself when no one else did, and of realizing that no dream was too big if you were willing to take the first step. And as she looked out at the vast world ahead, she knew one thing for sure. The future was hers to shape. Lily's success at Tesla was not just a milestone for her. It was a turning point for the world. The energy recycling machine she had designed was quickly becoming a symbol of what could be achieved when the brightest minds collaborated for the greater good. The concept of sustainable energy wasn't new, but Lily's invention was different. It wasn't just another idea in the lab, it was a real, scalable solution that could be deployed globally. The media blitz continued, and with every interview, every article, Lily's face became more recognizable. She was now a spokesperson for the future of clean energy, and while she appreciated the attention, she couldn't help but feel a little overwhelmed. At heart, she was still that shy, quiet girl from her childhood bedroom, and the bright lights of fame were a world away from the comfort of her humble beginnings. Her relationship with Elon Musk deepened, too. He became a mentor in the truest sense of the word, guiding her through the intricacies of entrepreneurship, leadership, and the harsh realities of running a world-changing project. "You're not just an inventor anymore, Lily," Elon told her one afternoon after an intense brainstorming session. "You're a leader. You have the power to shape industries, influence governments, and change the course of history. And that power comes with a responsibility." Lily had never really considered herself a leader. She was the quiet, introverted thinker who liked to sit behind her desk, coming up with solutions. But Elon's words stuck with her, and as the project continued to grow, she started to understand what he meant. The world's attention wasn't just on the energy machine anymore. It was on Lily, too. Governments, environmental groups, and business leaders saw her not just as a brilliant inventor but as a voice for the future of sustainable technology. They wanted to hear her thoughts on everything from climate policy to global energy markets. At first, it was exhilarating. Lily had the chance to speak at international summits, participate in think tanks, and offer insights on how the world could transition to a cleaner, more efficient energy system. Her opinions were sought after by major organizations, and her impact seemed limitless. But as the months went on, the weight of it all began to feel suffocating. One late night, Lily found herself in the middle of a particularly intense conference call with global energy leaders. The discussion was focused on how to scale up her technology and bring it to developing nations, many of whom were struggling with access to reliable and affordable power. The call had stretched into hours, and with every passing minute, Lily felt a growing sense of unease. "Lily, how soon can we get this technology into the hands of the people who need it most?" one of the executives asked, his voice filled with urgency. Lily's mind raced. She had spent months refining the technology, ensuring it was efficient enough to make a meaningful impact. But getting it to the places that needed it the most, places that lacked the infrastructure to support such a high-tech solution, presented an entirely new set of challenges. "We're ready to scale up," Lily said, her voice steady but her mind clouded with doubt. "But there are still a lot of barriers to overcome. Logistics, infrastructure, financing. It's not as simple as just building more machines." "Exactly," another voice chimed in. "But we need this now. People are counting on us." The weight of their words pressed down on her. People were counting on her, not just as an inventor, but as a symbol of hope, a leader who had the power to change the world. Lily excused herself from the call, feeling a knot tighten in her stomach. She walked out into the quiet hallway of the Tesla headquarters, seeking some solitude to clear her mind. As she stood in front of the massive glass windows that looked out over the sprawling campus, she realized something that hit her with a deep sense of truth. She was no longer just a creator of ideas. She was a decision-maker, a change-maker. That realization scared her. She had always been someone who worked behind the scenes, focusing on the technical details. Now, she was expected to lead, and not just on a small scale. She was expected to guide the future of energy for the entire planet. As the realization sank in, a familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. "You've got a lot on your plate," Elon said, standing behind her, his tone quiet but knowing. "I can see it in your face. You're carrying the weight of the world." Lily turned to him, forcing a smile. "I'm not sure I'm cut out for this, Elon. I mean, it's one thing to invent a machine, but it's another thing to change the way the world works. The expectations, they're huge. What if I fail?" Elon stepped closer, his gaze softening. Failure isn't the end, Lily. It's part of the journey. But the reason you're feeling this pressure is because you care. You're not just in this to change the world. You want to help people. And that's what makes you the right person for this job. You've always had the vision. Now it's about staying true to that vision, even when things get tough. Lily looked out at the horizon, feeling both the weight and the promise of the future. But how do I keep going? What if I let people down? You won't, Elon said firmly. You'll find a way, just like you always have. You've already done the impossible, and you're not alone. There's a whole world of people who are ready to follow your lead. Lily let out a breath, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in days. Thanks, Elon. I don't know what I'd do without you. He smiled. That's what mentors are for. The next few months were filled with action and intense collaboration. Lily worked with a team of engineers, policymakers, and investors to ensure the technology could be implemented in regions that needed it most. She traveled to developing countries, meeting with government officials, NGO leaders, and community organizers. Each trip presented new challenges, but it also offered her an opportunity to witness firsthand the impact her technology could have on the lives of people who had never had access to reliable power. In one village in Africa, Lily saw the difference her machine could make. Families who once relied on dangerous kerosene lamps for light were now using solar-powered energy generated by her machines. Children could study at night without breathing in toxic fumes. Small businesses that had been limited by a lack of electricity were thriving. It was a humbling experience, one that made her realize just how important her work truly was. Have you ever felt the pressure of expectations on your shoulders? How did you overcome it? Share your experiences and tips in the comments below. Lily had come full circle. She was no longer just a shy, 10-year-old girl with an idea. She was a global leader, shaping the future of energy. The journey had been filled with setbacks, self-doubt, and sleepless nights, but it had also been filled with moments of triumph, growth, and, most importantly, purpose. As she looked at the machines in operation across the world, transforming the lives of millions, Lily realized something incredible. The future she had dreamed of was now here. Lily stood at the edge of a remote village in Southeast Asia, gazing out at a landscape she'd never seen before. The sun was setting over the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow on the earth below. But what struck her wasn't the breathtaking view. It was the sight of something far more profound. Children studying by electric lights, small businesses buzzing with activity, and homes that were no longer plunged into darkness after the sun set. All of it was powered by the very technology she had invented. This was the dream she had once thought impossible. A global, renewable energy solution that could provide power to communities that had never had access to it before. And now, as the realization sank in, Lily felt an overwhelming sense of pride. She had changed lives. But this was just the beginning. Tesla's energy recycling machine had taken off globally. After successful tests in several developing countries, the first major contract had been signed with a consortium of international NGOs and government agencies. They had agreed to deploy her technology across dozens of countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. It wasn't just a one-off project anymore. It was a movement. For Lily, it wasn't just about the accolades or the spotlight anymore. It was about purpose. She had set out to create something that could help solve one of the world's most pressing problems: energy inequality. Now, she was seeing it unfold in real time, in places where the need was most urgent. She remembered the day she had first thought of the idea, sitting in her bedroom as a quiet, shy 10-year-old. She had no idea that her curiosity, her determination to build and create, would lead to something that could shift the global balance of energy distribution. And yet, here she was, standing on the brink of making a real-world impact. But as the scope of her work grew, so did the complexities. Back at Tesla headquarters, Lily sat at a large table in a glass-walled conference room, surrounded by experts from all over the world. The room was buzzing with excitement and tension as a series of meetings and discussions unfolded. Lily was now the face of the project, the person everyone turned to for insight and direction. But the challenge ahead was becoming even more daunting. Elon, Lily said, looking up from the thick stack of documents in front of her. We've scaled up the technology, but now we're facing a new problem. We need to make sure the infrastructure in these countries can support it. We're talking about providing energy to places with limited or no grid connections. There are issues with logistics, regulatory barriers, and the reality that some of these communities don't even have roads to transport the machines. Elon, who had always been a master of turning obstacles into opportunities, leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful look on his face. We knew the infrastructure challenge would be there, Lily, but you've already proven that you're capable of tackling bigger problems. We need to think outside the box. Lily nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on her again. She had to ensure that her technology wasn't just something that worked on paper, but something that could be practically applied in real-world conditions. And that was going to take more than just the technology. It was going to take partnerships, coordination, and innovative solutions. As the team discussed new strategies to solve these challenges, Lily felt herself growing more confident in her role as a leader. She no longer saw herself as just the inventor of a machine. She had become a global strategist, working to ensure her vision had the maximum impact. A few months later, a breakthrough came. A partnership was forged with a network of local businesses in several African nations, organizations that were already working to build out the necessary infrastructure. Together, they would design mobile energy units that could be deployed to remote regions. These units, powered by Lily's energy recycling technology, would be able to provide power to areas with no access to permanent electricity grids. The solution was simple. Instead of transporting large, stationary machines to places without infrastructure, they would create portable units that could be moved from place to place as needed. These mobile units could supply electricity to hospitals, schools, and even entire villages, transforming local economies and giving people the ability to charge devices, run businesses, and improve their quality of life. Lily's heart raced as the first pilot units were rolled out. The results were immediate and overwhelming. Villages that had been isolated and underdeveloped were now thriving, with families enjoying the benefits of electricity for the first time. In one village in Kenya, Lily saw the machine in action. A local entrepreneur, who had been running a small bakery by candlelight, now had access to a consistent power supply. He could bake bread all night if he wanted, and the bakery was running at full capacity, providing jobs and income for dozens of local workers. Lily stood in the middle of the bustling bakery, watching the energy recycling unit hum softly in the background. The entire community had been transformed, a change she had only dreamed of months ago. A year later, the technology had expanded further, with units deployed in over 40 countries. Lily's machine was powering hospitals in rural parts of India, schools in remote islands of the Pacific, and clean water systems in parts of sub-Saharan Africa. The ripple effect of her invention was being felt across the globe. But it wasn't just about providing energy anymore. The larger implications of Lily's work were starting to unfold. With access to electricity, entire communities could now engage in economic activity. Children were attending school after dark, studying in a way they never could before. Rural health clinics, once isolated from the rest of the world, could now store vaccines, communicate with specialists via telemedicine, and provide life-saving treatments. Back in California, the media spotlight on Lily hadn't waned. Every month, new stories were published about her and the success of her global energy initiative. She was hailed as one of the most influential innovators of her generation, a title that felt strange to her, considering how far she had come from the shy, quiet girl who had once dreamed of making a difference. But despite the recognition, Lily remained grounded. She didn't see herself as a hero or a celebrity. She saw herself as a person who had been given the opportunity to solve a problem, and she had done everything in her power to see it through. One afternoon, while working in her office at Tesla, Elon came in to check on her progress. "You've come a long way," he said, his usual intensity softened by the pride in his voice. "I remember when we first met, you were just a young inventor with a big idea. Now you've changed the world. You've made it better." Lily smiled, feeling the weight of his words. "I didn't do it alone," she replied. "None of this would have been possible without the team, the support of people who believed in me, and the communities who trusted us." Elon nodded. "True, but you were the one who started the journey. And that's what sets you apart. You saw something others didn't, and you kept pushing forward." Lily stood at the window of her office, looking out over the horizon. She had come so far, but the journey was far from over. There were still millions of people to help and countless more challenges to tackle. But she knew one thing for sure. She was ready for whatever came next. The future, as always, was in her hands. As Lily watched the world-changing energy revolution she'd set in motion unfold, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of accomplishment. But she also knew that in the world of innovation, success often attracted new challenges, and her mission to bring energy to every corner of the globe was far from over. The next obstacle came quickly, unexpectedly, and hit her harder than anything before. It wasn't a technical issue. It was something far more complex, a political battle. It began with a phone call late one evening. Lily had just wrapped up a day of meetings, feeling the exhaustion of months of travel and endless strategy sessions. The phone rang, its shrill sound pulling her away from a half-finished cup of tea. She answered it without thinking. "Lily, we've got a problem." Elon's voice came through the receiver, tense and urgent. Lily's pulse quickened. "What happened?" "We've just learned that several governments have started pushing back against the widespread deployment of your energy recycling technology. It's not about the technology itself. It's about control, influence, and resources. They're beginning to question whether foreign companies should have such a dominant role in providing energy to their nations." Lily felt a chill spread across her body. She had known there would be challenges ahead, but she hadn't anticipated something like this. Governments, who had once welcomed her innovation with open arms, were now turning against it. There were fears that if a foreign entity controlled energy resources, it could destabilize national power and influence. "Is this just a few isolated cases, or is this a bigger issue?" Lily asked, trying to steady her thoughts. "It's bigger than we thought," Elon said. "Some of these governments are questioning whether your project could undermine their energy independence, even though you've done everything by the book. They're looking at new regulations, tariffs, and some are even threatening to revoke permissions for the rollout of your machines." Lily leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. This was unexpected. When she had started her project, it had been driven by the pure desire to solve a pressing global need. But the politics of energy were far more complicated than she'd anticipated. "Do we have any allies in those regions?" she asked, her mind racing with possible solutions. "There are a few," Elon replied, "but the pressure is mounting, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. Some of these governments are claiming your technology is a Trojan horse for foreign control. It's not just about energy anymore. It's about power." Lily sighed, feeling a familiar knot of anxiety form in her stomach. This wasn't just about engineering anymore. It was about navigating a global political minefield. The next few weeks were filled with endless conference calls, meetings with diplomats, and strategy sessions with local teams. Lily knew she had to tread carefully. The last thing she wanted was to have her technology misrepresented or become the center of an international conflict. The pressure began to build. She was no longer just the young inventor with a big idea. She was a key player in a global conversation about energy sovereignty, the future of technology, and the balance of power between nations. It wasn't just Elon who was keeping a close eye on things. Some of the world's biggest corporations, once allies, began to distance themselves from Lily's project, fearing backlash from governments they depended on. Investors who had poured millions into her company started to question whether it was wise to continue pouring resources into a venture that could now be seen as politically contentious. In her quiet moments, Lily found herself grappling with feelings of guilt and doubt. Had she unwittingly started a firestorm? Had her desire to change the world created unintended consequences? One morning, as she sat in her office, sorting through a mountain of emails, Lily received an unexpected visitor. It was Nia, the young African entrepreneur who had helped bring her energy recycling machines to the villages in Kenya. Nia had become a key partner in the global deployment of the technology, and Lily trusted her instincts as much as she trusted her own. "Lily," Nia said, sitting down across from her, "I've been talking to a few leaders in Africa, and I have some ideas. I think we can turn this situation around, but it will take more than just technology. We need to show the world that what you're doing is about collaboration, not control." Lily raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What do you mean?" "We need to reframe the narrative," Nia said, her eyes bright with determination. "Instead of focusing on what we're giving these countries, let's focus on what we're building together. We can create a new narrative of energy empowerment where these governments see the value in working with you, not just relying on you. You're not just giving them technology, you're giving them the tools to be self-sufficient. Lily's heart began to race with the possibility of a new approach. It wasn't just about bringing technology to people. It was about bringing people into the fold, empowering them to take control of their own energy future. Can you give me an example? Lily asked, leaning forward, her mind already whirring with ideas. Nia smiled, her confidence infectious. Let's talk about how we've been working in the communities. These aren't just machines you've sold to them. You've created local partnerships, trained local engineers, and provided resources that allow them to maintain and grow the technology themselves. We need to amplify that, to show governments that this isn't foreign intervention. This is collaboration. This is economic empowerment. This is the future. Lily felt a sense of hope begin to stir inside her. This wasn't just a political battle anymore. It was a chance to rewrite the narrative. She could show the world that the future of energy was one of shared ownership, not exploitation. With Nia's guidance, Lily and her team launched an ambitious new campaign. They began working directly with local leaders to develop educational programs, training centers, and community-driven initiatives to showcase the value of their partnerships. They hosted forums where national leaders, local entrepreneurs, and community members could come together and discuss the future of energy. At the same time, Lily reached out to diplomatic channels, working tirelessly to address concerns and reassure governments that her mission wasn't to control energy resources, but to give people the tools to take ownership of their own futures. The response was slow, but over time, the tide began to turn. Some governments began to soften their stance, seeing the practical benefits of having locally led energy solutions. In Kenya, one of the first countries to deploy her machines, local officials spoke out in support of the technology, praising the impact it had had on their people. In India, the conversation shifted toward the idea of co-investment, where the Indian government would work with Lily's team to build local manufacturing plants, ensuring that the country's energy needs were met by local industry. As the campaign grew, so did Lily's understanding of the delicate balance between technology, business, and geopolitics. She wasn't just an inventor anymore. She was a diplomat, a negotiator, and a visionary. She had learned to navigate not only technical challenges, but also the complexities of a world where innovation, power, and politics were deeply intertwined. But despite the challenges, Lily remained resolute. She had set out to change the world, and nothing was going to stop her. Have you ever had to face an unexpected challenge that made you rethink your approach? How did you adapt? Share your thoughts and strategies in the comments below. Lily stood once again in front of the glass windows of her office, staring out over the horizon. She had faced political storms, personal doubts, and challenges that had at times seemed insurmountable. But she knew this wasn't the end of her journey. It was just another chapter. The future was still ahead of her, and it was brighter than ever. The pressure was mounting. Even though Lily's new diplomatic efforts had started to pay off, the sheer scale of her project was beginning to feel like too much for any one person to bear. Every step forward seemed to bring with it a new set of hurdles. There were more governments to appease, more regions to monitor, and more questions about the sustainability of the entire initiative. It had been 6 months since Lily's team had successfully reframed the narrative around her energy recycling technology. There had been significant progress. Certain countries had begun to fully embrace the model of local energy production and ownership. In India, the first co-investment plants were under construction, and in Africa, the mobile energy units had become a lifeline to communities in desperate need of power. Yet the magnitude of the changes she had set in motion began to sink in. One early morning, Lily walked into Tesla's headquarters, where she had spent countless hours since the beginning of the project. The building was full of the usual hustle and bustle. Engineers discussing prototypes, analysts poring over data, and marketing teams preparing new press releases. But today, the usual hum of productivity felt heavier, like the air had thickened. Lily's phone buzzed as she entered the conference room. It was a message from Elon. "We need to talk. Urgent." Her stomach dropped. She couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so anxious about a simple text. The last time Elon had asked to meet like this had been when the political pushback had first started, and that conversation had been hard enough. She texted back, On my way. Minutes later, she found herself in Elon's office, sitting across from him. The look on his face wasn't one of the usual enthusiasm he was known for. It was the same intensity, but there was something different in his eyes. Worry. What's going on? Lily asked, her voice tinged with concern. Elon, you're scaring me. I know, he replied, leaning back in his chair, his hands clasped in front of him. But it's not just politics this time, Lily. There's a new challenge, and it's one we weren't expecting. Lily's heart began to race. She braced herself. It's the economics of scaling. We've hit a financial wall, Elon continued. As we expand, the cost of production for the mobile energy units is skyrocketing. We've hit unexpected logistical costs, and some of the larger-scale deployments we were hoping for in places like Brazil and Nigeria are being delayed indefinitely due to regulatory hurdles and financial constraints. Investors are getting nervous. Lily felt like the ground had shifted beneath her. She had known that scaling up her technology would involve complex challenges, but this was different. She had promised to change the world, and now the reality of the situation was beginning to hit home. She wasn't just fighting for new technology anymore. She was fighting for the very future of her vision. Are we going to pull back? Lily asked, her voice faltering. No, absolutely not, Elon said, shaking his head. But we need a new plan. We need to find a way to make this financially sustainable on a global scale. The investors need to see a path forward that doesn't just rely on goodwill or government contracts. We need to prove that the entire system can stand on its own. Lily sat back, trying to absorb the weight of what Elon was saying. Every day felt like a delicate balancing act, and now it seemed that the scales were tipping dangerously. The next few weeks were a blur of sleepless nights, crunching numbers, and meetings with financial advisors and business strategists. Lily was faced with the daunting task of finding a way to reduce costs while increasing the global rollout of her technology. She had to keep the dream alive, not just for the people who were depending on her technology, but for the communities that had already begun to see its transformative power. The team worked tirelessly to streamline the production process. They explored new materials, optimized logistics, and sought out alternative funding sources. It was a race against time, and while Lily remained hopeful, the pressure was overwhelming. Then came the unexpected breakthrough, a partnership with a global investment firm that had a reputation for backing disruptive technologies. The firm, known for its bold investments in the renewable energy sector, had been watching Lily's project from afar. They understood the gravity of what she was trying to accomplish and saw the potential for significant returns, not just financially, but socially. The firm proposed a joint venture. They would invest heavily in the scaling and distribution of the energy recycling units, helping to fund operations in exchange for a share of the long-term profits. It wasn't a complete solution, but it was the lifeline Lily had been hoping for. However, there was a catch. The firm wanted control over certain aspects of the project's direction. They wanted to have a say in which markets the technology would expand into first and how the production cost could be further reduced, even suggesting that some of the original values Lily had set for her project could be compromised for the sake of maximizing profits. The terms of the deal were tempting. It would solve her immediate financial problems and allow the project to move forward at full speed. But there was a voice in her head that cautioned her. What was the cost of compromising her principles? Lily spent days agonizing over the decision. Every solution seemed to come with a trade-off. Would she risk losing control over her dream for the sake of saving it? Could she continue her mission with the same values she had started with? Or would she have to accept the compromises that came with a more corporate-driven model? Her nights were filled with sleepless thinking. Every time she closed her eyes, the faces of the people she had helped, the children who could now study in the evening, the small business owners who had seen their profits skyrocket, flashed before her eyes. Could she really sacrifice their future for financial stability? But then, something shifted. She had already seen what was possible. She had already seen how lives could be changed by the very technology she had created. This wasn't the time to back down. Finally, after endless deliberation, Lily made the decision. She would accept the partnership, but with strict conditions that preserved the integrity of her vision. She would insist on maintaining full control over the ethical direction of the project. The firm could invest in scaling the technology, but she would make the final decisions about where it went and how it impacted the people who had trusted her. Lily met with Elon and the investment firm's representatives in a tense meeting, laying out her terms. "I'm willing to partner with you," she said, "but my priority will always be the people we're helping. This technology isn't just a business venture for me. It's a mission. And if you want to be part of it, we need to agree on one thing. No compromises on the values we've set." The representatives nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. They knew that Lily's integrity had driven the success of the project so far, and they were willing to meet her demands. The partnership was finalized. The investment came through, and the global rollout accelerated. But even with this new financial backing, Lily remained vigilant. She had walked through the fire and come out stronger. Her resolve had been tested, but she had learned that success didn't mean compromising her core principles. It meant adapting, adjusting to the challenges, but never losing sight of the mission. Lily sat in her office that evening, looking out at the city below. The weight of the world had not lessened. It had only grown heavier, but she was ready for it. This was just another battle in the long war to bring sustainable energy to every corner of the globe, and she was more determined than ever to win it. The months that followed were a blur of progress. Lily's partnership with the global investment firm had given her the resources she needed to push forward with her mission, and her team had managed to streamline production, reducing costs while increasing efficiency. The pressure was still intense, but now there was a sense of momentum. For the first time in a long while, Lily could feel the winds of change on her side. The expansion was accelerating, and countries that had once been hesitant were now signing agreements to roll out the energy recycling technology in their own regions. New deals were made in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, and local governments began to see the undeniable benefits of energy independence and sustainable power. The energy units, which had started as a small, grassroots project, were now becoming a staple of global infrastructure. In remote villages, entire communities were powered by the same technology that Lily had first introduced in Kenya. In India, large-scale manufacturing plants were operational, producing the units in-country and employing local workers. The project was no longer just about providing power, it was about empowering people. But with all of this success came a new set of challenges. The more global attention Lily's project received, the more intense the scrutiny became. One evening, after an exhausting round of international video conferences and strategy meetings, Lily sat at her desk, reviewing progress reports. The feeling of exhaustion was familiar by now. It had been years since she'd had a break, and the weight of her role was always present. But tonight, as she scrolled through the latest press articles and updates, something caught her eye. There, in bold print on the front page of a leading international business journal, Elon Musk and Lily Thompson revolutionize global energy, the technology that could change everything. Lily stared at the headline, her heart thumping in her chest. The world was finally taking notice. It wasn't just about the technology anymore. This wasn't just a niche innovation. It was something that could reshape the global energy market. And with that recognition came both opportunities and dangers. In the following weeks, Lily found herself at the center of a whirlwind of attention. Media outlets from around the world sought interviews. Influential figures, from political leaders to CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, reached out to discuss partnerships and potential collaborations. While the recognition was gratifying, it also brought pressure that Lily wasn't sure how to handle. She had always preferred to work behind the scenes, focused on the technology and its impact. But now, the spotlight was squarely on her, and every decision she made was being closely scrutinized. One afternoon, as Lily was preparing for another press briefing, Elon called. "How's the media storm treating you?" Elon asked, his voice light but with a hint of concern. Lily sighed. "Honestly, it's a lot. I feel like I'm constantly under a microscope now. People think I have all the answers, but it feels like I'm just making it up as I go." Elon laughed, though there was empathy in his tone. "You're not alone in feeling that way. But you're doing it, Lily. The world's been waiting for something like this, and you've given it to them. Just remember, you don't have to have all the answers. The people you're working with, your teams, your partners, your community, they're all part of this." "I know, but it's hard not to feel the weight of it," she admitted. "I want to make sure this doesn't turn into something that ends up doing more harm than good." I'm not in it for the fame or the glory. I just want to change the world. Elon's voice softened. You already have, and you will continue to. Don't let the noise distract you from why you started. Just keep your eyes on the bigger picture. The world is better for it. Later that week, at the United Nations Climate Summit in New York City, Lily took the stage for one of the most important speeches of her career. The room was filled with world leaders, industry giants, environmental activists, and members of the press. The atmosphere was electric, charged with anticipation for the woman who had revolutionized the way we thought about energy. Lily stood at the podium, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She had never been comfortable in the spotlight, but today was different. Today wasn't about her. It was about the future. It was about everyone. As she began speaking, her voice steady but filled with passion, the crowd fell silent, hanging on her every word. Today, we are at a crossroads, she began. For too long, our planet has suffered under the burden of energy systems that deplete our resources and harm our environment. But today, we stand at the threshold of a new era, one where energy is not a commodity for the privileged few, but a basic human right for all. The audience was riveted. Lily's words echoed throughout the hall, her message resonating with both the urgency of the moment and the optimism of possibility. For generations, we have believed that energy is something that must be extracted and consumed. But what if we could recycle energy? What if we could harness the power of our own waste, turn it into something useful, and distribute it to every corner of the world? The room was silent for a moment before the audience erupted in applause. Lily continued, "We have the technology to make this vision a reality. And we don't just have the power to transform our energy systems. We have the opportunity to transform the way we think about collaboration, about the power of communities coming together to solve global problems." Her words were met with another wave of applause. As she finished her speech, Lily felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. For the first time, it didn't feel like she was fighting an uphill battle. It felt like the world was finally ready to embrace change. And that, more than anything, was what kept her going. Back at her office, Lily reflected on everything that had led her here. She had started this journey as a shy 10-year-old with a dream of changing the world. And now, she was standing at the precipice of something that could truly impact billions of lives. But with the recognition came the responsibility. Every decision she made, every step forward, carried weight. There were still hurdles to overcome, problems to solve, and skeptics to convince. But for the first time, Lily felt confident in her ability to rise to the occasion. The world was watching, and she was ready. Lily's journey to change the world wasn't easy, and it's still not over. Have you ever taken a risk that led to a life-changing opportunity? How did you navigate the pressure of it? Share your story in the comments. As Lily stared out over the city, the horizon before her seemed brighter than ever. The battle was far from over, but she had crossed an important threshold. The future was uncertain, but one thing was for sure. The world would never be the same. And neither would she. Despite the growing momentum of Lily's global initiative, an undercurrent of unease began to take root in her mind. The media buzz, the applauding crowds at the UN, the international partnerships, it all seemed like a dream come true. Yet, behind the scenes, things weren't as perfect as they appeared. The global energy sector was vast and filled with powerful players, many of whom had deep financial stakes in the existing fossil fuel infrastructure. And Lily had just introduced an innovation that threatened to disrupt everything they had spent decades building. It was no surprise, then, that these old-guard industries, whose fortunes depended on the status quo, were beginning to take notice. But what surprised her was how far they were willing to go to protect their interests. It started as a few odd rumors, little whispers from different parts of the world. People she trusted, her close team, local leaders, even some investors, began mentioning strange occurrences, delays in shipments, unexplained logistical issues, and even software malfunctions with the energy recycling units. At first, Lily tried to brush it off. After all, scaling such a complex system globally was bound to result in hiccups. There would always be bugs to work out, teething issues when introducing new technology on such a large scale. But as the incidents started to accumulate, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that something more was at play. One evening, After an especially frustrating meeting with a production partner in South America, Lily found herself alone in her office, scrolling through the latest news. A headline caught her eye. A new energy era faces resistance from fossil fuel giants. It was a predictable angle, one that journalists had been writing about for months. But as she read further, something struck her as odd. The piece was unusually critical of the technology Lily's team had developed. It painted the energy recycling units as inefficient and untested, casting doubt on the global rollout. The tone was not just skeptical, it was combative. Lily's phone buzzed, breaking her concentration. It was from her chief engineer, Mark. "Lily, I've been investigating the recent production delays. I think we need to talk about something. I'm seeing patterns that don't seem coincidental." Lily quickly set up a video call with Mark, her heart pounding. The line crackled for a moment before Mark's face appeared on the screen. His normally calm demeanor was replaced with a sense of urgency. "I've been looking into the recent incidents with our shipments and the software glitches. It's not just a coincidence, Lily. Someone's actively sabotaging our efforts." Lily's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "It's subtle, but it's there. I found traces of digital interference in our software code. It's not something any of our engineers would have done. The delays we've been seeing? Same story. The equipment's been tampered with at various points in the supply chain." Lily felt a chill run down her spine. Sabotage. She hadn't even considered it. Who would do this? And why now? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mark looked grim. "That's the question, isn't it? And I have a theory. Several of our suppliers, especially in regions with high fossil fuel investments, have been reporting unusually high levels of pressure from, well, let's just say, interested parties. People who don't want to see this technology succeed." Lily was silent for a moment. She had always known that her project would face opposition from the status quo. But this wasn't just opposition. It was a calculated, coordinated effort to undermine everything she had worked for. The sheer scale of it was overwhelming. "Do you think this is just an isolated incident?" Lily asked. Mark shook his head. "No, I think it's only the beginning. We've already seen a few executives at our key investors pulling back quietly, pulling out their funding. And I've heard rumors that some governments are beginning to backpedal on their promises of support. It's all very subtle, but it's connected." Lily leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. This wasn't just about a few delayed shipments or technical issues. There was a bigger force at play. The very people who stood to lose billions if her technology succeeded. She knew what she had to do next. But first, she needed to take a step back, assess her allies, and determine exactly how deep the opposition ran. The following day, Lily met with Elon at Tesla's headquarters. His face was as serious as she'd ever seen it. "I've been hearing the same things," Elon said without preamble. "You're not imagining it. We've been getting whispers of strange things happening at some of our partner sites. Supply chains getting disrupted, tech being tampered with, and people pulling out of deals." Lily felt the weight of their shared understanding. This was no longer just about creating a better energy solution. This was war, and the enemy was powerful. "What do we do?" Lily asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "We need to hit back in a way they can't ignore. But we need to be careful," Elon replied. "We can't expose ourselves too early. The last thing we want is for them to catch wind of what we're doing." Lily nodded. "We'll have to take a more covert approach then, but we need the support of our allies. If we're going to face down the fossil fuel giants, we need to know who's on our side and who isn't." In the days that followed, Lily and Elon took their time setting up a plan. They reached out to trusted contacts in governments and NGOs, trying to gauge who might be willing to stand with them in the face of mounting pressure. Meanwhile, Mark and his team worked around the clock, installing digital security measures to root out any remaining vulnerabilities in the energy recycling system. But the more they dug, the more it became clear. The opposition was everywhere. A breakthrough came when Mark discovered something crucial. A small group of executives from some of the world's largest fossil fuel companies had been meeting regularly, coordinating efforts to disrupt renewable energy advancements. They had managed to infiltrate key supply chains, influencing the way shipments were routed and creating friction within governments by threatening economic retaliation. It was a conspiracy, a vast network of shadowy figures whose sole purpose was to protect their stranglehold on global energy. Lily felt a wave of both anger and determination. She had to expose this. She couldn't let the forces of greed and corruption win. But she also knew that doing so would not be easy. It meant stepping into a dangerous arena where the stakes were higher than ever. The fight had just become more complex. Lily's dream of a cleaner, more sustainable world was under siege by powerful forces that would stop at nothing to retain control. But she had something they didn't: resolve. And she wasn't about to let anyone destroy the future she had worked so hard to build. As Lily closed her eyes and leaned back in her chair, the gravity of the situation settled in. This was no longer just about energy or technology. It was about standing up for the future and the people who believed in it. The real battle was about to begin. The following weeks felt like a race against time. The stakes had never been higher. Lily was no longer just fighting to bring a new energy technology to the world. She was now in the middle of a high-stakes battle against those whose financial empire relied on the old, corrupt system. The forces conspiring against her were vast, and their reach extended far beyond what she had initially imagined. Lily's team, led by Mark and a handful of other trusted engineers, had managed to secure their supply chains, and with Elon's tech resources, they had bolstered their digital security measures. But the deeper they dug, the more they discovered just how embedded the opposition was in the global network. Corruption ran deep in some governments and corporations, and they were prepared to use every means at their disposal to maintain their control over the world's energy markets. Lily had expected this. After all, they had seen how vulnerable the fossil fuel industry was to the technology. But when the legal documents arrived at her office, they were nothing like she had anticipated. The suit was massive, targeting every aspect of her operation. From intellectual property theft to environmental hazards, even accusing the energy recycling units of causing unforeseen ecological damage. The claims were baseless. Her team had conducted rigorous environmental studies to ensure that the technology was safe, and there was no evidence of the kind of damage they were alleging. But that didn't matter. What mattered was the distraction. The legal battle would tie up resources, slow down progress, and divert public attention from the real success her team had achieved. Lily sat down with her legal team to discuss the lawsuit in detail, her mind spinning with how to combat such a vicious attack. "We'll fight this," Lily said firmly, "but it's going to take all our focus. We need to counterattack, not just defend." Her lawyer nodded. "We'll file for a dismissal, but we'll also have to start gathering evidence of foul play. We know they're trying to slow you down, but we need proof they're behind it." Lily spent the next few days on the phone, coordinating with Mark, Elon, and her legal team. It became clear that this was not going to be a quick win. The lawsuit was just the first step in a much bigger campaign to destroy her company's credibility. But Lily wasn't about to back down. At the same time, Mark and his team had begun to unravel the web of sabotage that had been deployed against them. They found that the interference with their shipments and software wasn't just limited to delays. It was a deliberate attempt to create a reputation of failure around the energy recycling units. Key shipments had been rerouted to the wrong ports, factories were reporting malfunctioning units that had been tampered with, and entire countries were being fed misinformation about the technology's reliability. In one particularly alarming incident, an entire shipment of energy units meant for a government-backed project in Africa was mysteriously delayed. When the units finally arrived, they were discovered to have been tampered with, damaged beyond repair. A source close to Lily's team in Africa reported that the local contractors involved in the installation were approached by anonymous parties offering better alternatives, backed by significant kickbacks. It was becoming clear. This wasn't just corporate espionage. It was a coordinated global campaign designed to stop Lily's revolution before it could fully take root. In the midst of all this turmoil, Lily received a mysterious call. The voice on the other end was distorted, but it sounded familiar. "You're in deeper than you think," the voice said cryptically. "They know who you are now. They're watching everything you do. But you're not alone." Before Lily could respond, the line went dead. She sat in stunned silence, her heart pounding in her chest. Who was that? And why did it feel like they knew exactly what was happening? Lily's instincts told her that whoever had just called was trying to warn her. But from what? And who could she trust now? That evening, Lily met with Elon and Mark at a secure location, a private conference room deep within Tesla's headquarters. The atmosphere was heavy with uncertainty, the air charged with tension. Elon, who had always been confident in the face of adversity, looked unusually grim. "I've been getting some strange signals from our own tech," Elon said, his voice low. "Our systems have been hacked. It's not just you. They're targeting everyone. They're trying to get ahead of us by gathering intel on what we're planning next. We need to stop them before they do more damage." Lily's mind raced. The voice on the phone, the interference with the shipments, everything was starting to come together. They were being watched. And the fact that even Elon was being targeted made the situation even more dire. "We need to trace this back," Mark said, his eyes narrowed. "Whoever is behind this is using very advanced methods. They're playing a long game. But I think I can find a way to track them if we act fast." Lily nodded. "Let's do it. We need to stay one step ahead, or we'll lose everything." The next few days were a blur of urgency and strategy. Mark and his team worked tirelessly to trace the source of the cyber attacks, while Elon's engineers launched a counteroffensive to secure their communication networks. They were relentless in their pursuit, using every tool at their disposal to stay ahead of the game. Meanwhile, Lily kept up appearances, managing her team, investors, and public relations, all while trying to stay calm in the face of overwhelming pressure. The turning point came one night when Mark's team finally cracked the code. They traced the interference back to a network of shell companies owned by some of the world's largest fossil fuel corporations. The network was vast, spanning multiple continents, and its goal was clear: to disrupt renewable energy technology at all costs. But there was more. There was a key player at the center of it all, someone who had been orchestrating the sabotage. Lily's heart sank when she saw the name. It was someone she knew well, a high-ranking government official who had publicly supported the energy recycling initiative just a year earlier. But behind closed doors, he had been working with the fossil fuel giants to undermine her efforts. "So, it was you, all along?" Lily muttered under her breath, staring at the computer screen in disbelief. This was more than just corporate sabotage. It was a betrayal. Lily sat back in her chair, her mind reeling. The web of deceit was far more tangled than she had ever imagined. The very people she thought were allies were, in fact, part of the conspiracy to destroy her mission. But one thing was clear: the fight was far from over. She had come this far, and she wasn't about to give up now. She had already faced impossible odds, and yet, she had managed to rise above them. This was her moment. Lily looked out the window, her mind set on the road ahead. The battle was intensifying, but it was one she was determined to win. With Elon and Mark by her side, and the strength of her team behind her, she knew that this was only the beginning. The enemy might be powerful, but they had underestimated one thing: her resolve. Lily's world had irrevocably changed. The sabotage, the lawsuits, the covert cyber attacks, they were all pieces of a larger, more dangerous game. The discovery of the betrayal by the high-ranking government official hit hard, but it also clarified one important truth: the forces trying to tear down her work weren't just faceless corporations. They were people in power who controlled more than just money. They controlled the narrative. They controlled the future. Now that Lily knew the full extent of the opposition, it was time to counteract. But how? The enemy was vast, and they operated in the shadows, using every tool available to keep the world dependent on fossil fuels. Lily couldn't just fight them head-on. It would be a battle of attrition that could take years she didn't have. She needed to find a way to turn the tables quickly. The first part of the plan was to expose the corruption. With Mark's help, they began gathering evidence of the conspiracy: meetings, emails, financial transactions, and most crucially, direct involvement of the government official in the sabotage efforts. But exposing these powerful players wasn't just a matter of releasing a report. It was a matter of timing, and playing the game just as strategically as they had. The media would be crucial in getting the truth to the masses, but there was a risk. If they released the information too soon, the opposition would squash it, using their influence to discredit everything. "We need to find our allies," Lily said one evening in a private meeting with Elon and Mark. "The ones who still have a vested interest in seeing this succeed. We need to build a coalition, not just from governments, but from every sector that believes in the future we're building." And we need to do it now, before they completely dismantle everything. Elon nodded, his usually confident demeanor showing the strain of the situation. I've been working with a few tech giants behind the scenes. We're looking at ways to secure the data and expose this, but we'll need a major public push to make it stick. It has to be a tidal wave of truth. Lily agreed. We need to make it so big that they can't ignore it. We need the people behind us. Lily's team began to mobilize. They reached out to influential individuals and organizations who had backed the energy initiative from the start. Environmental activists, clean tech entrepreneurs, scientists, and even large-scale investors who understood the gravity of the situation. The goal was simple: show the world that renewable energy wasn't just a niche solution. It was the future, and they needed to stand together to fight for it. Lily's team also began working with several high-profile journalists who had already reported on her work. It was time to shift the narrative. Instead of merely responding to attacks, they would take the lead in shaping the story, framing it as a battle between the future and the past, between innovation and greed. But even as they reached out to their allies, they knew the real challenge was ahead: the public reveal. Then came the second blow. This time, a direct and brutal attack on Lily's company's public image. It came via an explosive expose, published by a major news outlet with ties to the fossil fuel industry. The article accused Lily's energy recycling units of being a science experiment gone wrong, claiming that several units had caused major power failures in developing nations. There were allegations of bribery within local governments and accusations of neglecting basic safety standards. The timing of the piece couldn't have been worse. The narrative, if it gained traction, could not only destroy Lily's company, it could kill her reputation in one fell swoop. For a moment, Lily's breath caught in her throat. The sting of betrayal, of her work being called into question on such a large scale, hit her harder than she expected. But then, something inside her clicked. This wasn't just an attack, it was a sign that they were scared. They were pulling out all the stops because they knew that Lily's technology had the power to change everything. "They're getting desperate," Lily said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. "And that's exactly what we want." Lily knew they had to hit back, and hit back hard. The plan was already in motion. Mark's team had gathered enough evidence to expose the true culprits behind the sabotage campaign, including proof of the government officials' involvement. Elon's tech crew had been working on securing communications, using encryption to ensure that their next steps would remain protected. But there was one more thing Lily had to do. She needed to take the fight to the public. The next few days were a blur. Lily was in constant communication with key allies, politicians, investors, and clean tech advocates. They all had a stake in the future of energy, and they needed to be on the same page. And then, the time came to make the reveal. Lily and her team released a detailed investigative report that included everything they had uncovered about the fossil fuel company's interference, emails, financial records, and even video footage of meetings between the government official and the oil and gas moguls. They also released the findings of Mark's team, showing how the sabotage had been carried out at various points in the supply chain. But they didn't just release it quietly. They released it in stages, creating a sense of mounting urgency that would keep the media and public attention focused on the issue. The first article dropped with a bang, followed by interviews, press conferences, and coordinated media coverage. Lily and Elon went on talk shows, giving interviews and laying bare the truth about what had been happening behind the scenes. They spoke about their vision for the future of renewable energy, the dangers of corruption, and why the world needed to unite behind this cause. The coverage exploded across news outlets, social media, and blogs. The people were listening. At first, the opposition tried to push back. They issued statements claiming that the report was fabricated, that the evidence was inconclusive. But their voices grew weaker and more defensive with each passing day. The global public was catching on, and the pressure was mounting. Then, the first domino fell. The government official, who had been at the center of the sabotage efforts, was forced to resign amid mounting evidence and calls for investigation. One by one, other high-ranking officials and corporate heads implicated in the scandal were exposed. Their ties to the fossil fuel giants were undeniable, and they couldn't hide from the truth any longer. The moment of triumph was bittersweet. The battle wasn't over. Far from it. But Lily felt a sense of relief. For the first time, she felt that the world was waking up. People were beginning to realize the magnitude of what they were up against, and they were starting to demand change. But there was still more to be done. The next steps would be critical: fighting back against the lingering influence of the fossil fuel giants, securing the future of her technology, and ensuring that this victory was more than just a temporary shift. Still, in that moment, as she stood on stage in front of a cheering crowd, Lily knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. The battle for the future was now on a global stage, and she wasn't backing down. What would you do if you discovered that the system you trusted was working against you? Would you fight back or walk away? Share your thoughts below. Your voice matters. Lily's gaze swept over the crowd, a sense of determination settling in. The war wasn't won yet, but she could feel the tide turning. She was no longer fighting alone. The world was on her side. The exhilaration from the public victory was short-lived. As Lily stood in front of the cameras, the world applauding her and Elon's efforts, there was a stark realization sinking in. Exposing the corruption had only been the beginning. The real battle had just started. The forces trying to maintain their hold on the world's energy systems were not easily defeated, and they had no intention of going down without a fight. Lily had exposed the truth, but the truth alone wasn't enough to guarantee change. The fossil fuel industry still wielded immense power, and it wasn't just in the hands of a few corrupt officials and CEOs anymore. It was a global network of entrenched interests, manipulating governments, media, and economic policies. The question now was, how could they protect the future they had started to build without being sabotaged again? Within days of the revelations, Lily's team began receiving subtle threats. At first, it was nothing overt: an email from an anonymous account warning her to back off, a cryptic voicemail left late at night, even strange messages on social media accounts. But these small incidents began to escalate, becoming more brazen and unsettling. One afternoon, Mark called Lily into a secure conference room at Tesla headquarters. His face was grim as he stood over a laptop screen, showing her a series of disturbing images. Someone is trying to hack into our systems again. They've infiltrated several high-level meetings about energy policy. This time, it's not just about the technology. It's about disrupting the legislation we've been working so hard to push through. Lily's stomach tightened. The first wave had been about sabotage and disinformation, but this felt like something even more dangerous. They weren't just fighting dirty anymore. They were trying to rewrite the rules of the game. Who's behind this? Lily asked, her voice steady but with an underlying edge of concern. Mark leaned in, scrolling through the images. It's not just a few corrupt officials anymore. These are covert lobbyists pushing their own agenda at the highest levels. They've infiltrated governments, think tanks, policymaking groups. We've been too focused on the tech side. We underestimated how deeply their influence runs. Lily knew that the fight for the future was no longer confined to corporate boardrooms and closed-door meetings. It had become political, international, and ideological. The people she had once seen as allies were now in danger of being silenced, and the tech she was developing, the energy recycling units, was in serious jeopardy of being buried under layers of bureaucracy, corporate interests, and media manipulation. Her phone rang just as she was processing this. It was Elon. "We need to get ahead of this," he said, his voice sharp with urgency. "The opposition is using their influence to push new laws that could make the technology we're building illegal in certain regions. We need to mobilize fast, or we're going to lose months, maybe years, of progress." Lily's heart pounded. What can we do? We need to take this public, but in a way that can't be ignored. We need the support of governments, investors, and the people. This is no longer about just innovation. It's about reform, about changing the system itself. Lily's next move was to call a global summit, an event where leaders from all corners of the energy, technology, environmental, and political sectors would gather to discuss the future of sustainable energy. The goal wasn't just to showcase the technology. It was to bring accountability to the powers trying to suppress it and to shift public sentiment in their favor. Over the following weeks, Lily and Elon worked tirelessly to line up speakers, environmental activists, energy experts, and tech innovators. They also extended invitations to government leaders who had expressed interest in renewable energy solutions. Lily knew that the summit would be a pivotal moment. If she could get the world's eyes focused on this cause, then the momentum would be unstoppable. Mark, meanwhile, focused on securing the technology. He implemented advanced encryption and anti-tampering software to prevent any further attempts at sabotage. The last thing they needed was for their work to be tampered with again, especially now that they had garnered the attention of so many influential players. The day of the summit arrived, and Lily felt a sense of both dread and excitement in equal measure. It was going to be the most significant public event of her life. The stakes were higher than ever. If she failed, everything she had worked for could come crashing down. The summit hall was filled with journalists, industry leaders, and activists. The audience buzzed with anticipation as they waited for the opening speeches. Elon took the stage first, his usual charisma on full display as he laid out the case for renewable energy. He spoke about the urgency of the climate crisis, the necessity for new technologies, and the promise of a cleaner, more sustainable world. Lily's turn came next. She stood before the audience, her heart racing as the spotlight hit her. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. This technology, Lily began, her voice strong, is not just a solution to a problem, it's a lifeline. It's a lifeline for our planet, for our children, and for the future we all share. But it's not enough to develop technology. We need to change the system that is holding us back. We need to hold the people who've been blocking innovation accountable. The crowd was silent, captivated by her words. This isn't just about energy. It's about justice, she continued. It's about accountability. For too long, those who profit from destruction have had their way. It's time for us to take back control. And we're not just going to talk about it, we're going to fight for it. As Lily finished her speech, the room erupted in applause. The energy in the room was electric. There was no denying the sense of unity and purpose that had taken hold. But the fight was far from over. The fossil fuel lobby had not been sitting idly by. Within hours of the summit's conclusion, several major media outlets published opinion pieces attacking the conference, calling it a gathering of eco-radicals and accusing Lily of attempting to manipulate the global political system. The opposition's response was predictable, but it didn't matter anymore. Lily's message had already begun to spread like wildfire. The people who had heard her speak were energized, and they were sharing her words on social media, in the press, and with their governments. It was clear that the battle for a sustainable future was no longer one fought in the shadows. It was now in the open, and Lily was ready to lead it. As momentum built, new challenges emerged, not just from the fossil fuel industry, but from governments that were still dependent on oil and gas revenue, from international trade agreements, and from corporations that were afraid of losing their grip on power. The more successful Lily's initiative became, the more they pushed back. But with every challenge, Lily felt something inside her solidify. The opposition was strong, yes, but they were fighting a losing battle. The world was changing, and she had the chance to lead it. Lily took a moment to look out the window, watching the lights of the city below flicker. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But she also knew that the world was finally waking up, and she would fight with everything she had to ensure the future was one worth fighting for. The battle had only just begun, and she was ready. The days following the summit were a whirlwind. Lily's speech had reverberated across the globe, sparking a wave of conversations that reached from boardrooms to living rooms. But as the world rallied behind her vision for a cleaner, more sustainable future, the forces trying to stop her became more vocal and more aggressive. The fossil fuel lobby was not backing down. They had always been experts at creating narratives and manipulating public sentiment, and now they were doubling down. TV stations, op-eds, and even social media platforms were flooded with articles claiming that Lily's technology was untested, dangerous, and an overreach by Silicon Valley elites. They painted Lily and Elon as idealistic billionaires who were too disconnected from the realities of the working class. It was clear they were trying to create doubt. And for a moment, as Lily sat at her desk, watching the storm unfold online, she wondered if she had miscalculated. But that doubt was fleeting. She had been through worse. Lily sat with Elon in a private conference room at Tesla headquarters. It was one of the rare moments they had to themselves, away from the media frenzy, away from the constant pressure. "We knew they were going to come after us," Elon said, his voice low. "But this is more than I expected." They're throwing everything at us. Every resource they have. They know that if we succeed, it's the end of their game. Lily nodded, her mind racing. She'd seen the patterns before. It wasn't just the usual media smears. This was a coordinated campaign, coming from multiple angles, designed to undermine everything she and Elon had worked for. It wasn't just about discrediting the technology. It was about controlling the future. They'll try to make us look like failures, Lily said, her voice steely with resolve. But we can't let them define the narrative. We need to take this to the people. The people will decide. Elon leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. That's the only way we're going to win. We have to take it to the next level. Not just fight them in the media, but expose them. We know their weaknesses. Now it's time to show the world. Lily knew what he meant. It was time to move beyond the technology itself and start highlighting the corruption and greed behind the fossil fuel industry. It was time to go on the offensive, to reveal the hidden hand that had kept humanity shackled to the past for so long. But they needed to be smart. A direct confrontation with the corporate giants could lead to expensive lawsuits, public relations disasters, and perhaps worse, more sabotage. They needed a strategy that would reveal the truth, but in a way that made the world's attention unavoidable. The key to moving forward lay with the investors. Over the past few years, Lily had built relationships with influential investors who supported her vision for renewable energy. They weren't just passive financiers. They were people who understood the magnitude of the issue and the impact that transitioning to sustainable energy could have on the world. Lily knew she had to win them over in full force. If the investors threw their weight behind her, they could be the tipping point. But it wasn't just about convincing them to invest more. It was about convincing them to join the fight. One of her oldest supporters, William Carter, a tech investor known for his keen sense of future trends, had always been a staunch ally. Carter had made his fortune in the tech industry, but his passion for clean energy was unparalleled. He had a seat at some of the highest tables in Silicon Valley and knew how to make moves that would shake up industries. She called him late one evening, after a particularly grueling round of meetings. "William, I need you," Lily said, her voice low but resolute. "The opposition is pushing back hard. They're trying to make us look like a threat. We need to strike back, not just with the tech, but by going after the system they've built to keep control." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "You've got my attention," Carter said finally, "but we need to be strategic. If we go too fast, we risk looking like we're overreaching. I've got a few allies who could help, but we need to move in a way that's calculated." Lily leaned back, a slight smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "I knew you'd understand." The next few weeks were filled with late nights, strategy meetings, and countless phone calls. Carter introduced Lily to a network of influential investors, entrepreneurs, and policymakers, people who weren't just willing to support her financially, but who had the power to help her expose the truth and shift the tide of public opinion. Lily and Elon began working with these new allies to launch a global media campaign that wasn't just about promoting the technology. It was about making the fossil fuel giants the villains in this story. They began digging deeper, using their tech and investigative teams to uncover the dirty secrets that had been hidden for decades. The bribery, the cover-ups, the environmental destruction, the political manipulation. But it wasn't just about scandal. They also made a clear case for why this shift to renewable energy was not just an economic necessity, but a moral imperative. They worked with scientists to showcase how much the world was losing in terms of biodiversity and the environment by sticking with outdated energy systems. They got experts to talk about the potential dangers of continuing to depend on fossil fuels in the long run. It wasn't just about saving the planet. It was about saving humanity from an inevitable disaster. Lily also pushed forward a new initiative, a global call to action for ordinary people to get involved. She launched a social media campaign called "The Future Is Now," which invited people from all walks of life to join in the fight for clean energy. It wasn't just about big corporations or governments anymore. It was about the people. As the media campaign gained traction, the fossil fuel industry began to panic. They couldn't afford to have their secrets exposed, especially as people started to demand change. More and more reports emerged about their corrupt practices, and the public sentiment began to shift. Protests broke out in cities across the globe, demanding that governments take action and abandon fossil fuels in favor of renewable energy solutions. But the corporations weren't ready to give up. The backlash grew more intense. Lily's team started receiving direct threats, veiled warnings in the form of anonymous letters, and, more disturbingly, physical intimidation. One of the clean tech engineers at Tesla was involved in a car accident. Though it appeared accidental, there was no doubt in Lily's mind that it was no coincidence. She felt the pressure building. The stakes had never been higher, and the opposition was pulling out every stop to maintain their dominance. Still, Lily remained focused. She couldn't afford to be intimidated. She knew that every threat, every smear campaign, every attempt to slow them down was just proof that they were making progress. Lily stood on the balcony of her hotel room one night, overlooking the city below. It was a clear evening, and the lights twinkled like stars scattered across the landscape. She thought about the path she had taken, the obstacles she had overcome, and the battle she had yet to win. But there was no going back now. The fight for the future had begun in earnest, and the world was watching. Her phone buzzed. A message from Elon. "We've got them on the ropes. Time to land the knockout punch." The battle was far from over, but the tide was turning. Lily's resolve hardened. The final showdown was coming, and she was ready. Lily knew this was her moment. The world was changing, and it was her time to lead it. Lily had known from the start that they would face resistance. She had expected corporate pushback, political games, and perhaps even a media circus. What she hadn't fully anticipated was the depth of the opposition's reach, or how far they would go to protect their empire. But as the pressure mounted, Lily realized something else. This was no longer just a battle for the future of energy. This was a fight for control over the future itself. The threats had escalated. The latest one was a chilling reminder of just how much was at stake. A hacker group, aligned with the fossil fuel interests, had breached Tesla's network. While they hadn't gained access to the core technology, they had stolen valuable research documents and personal data on Lily and Elon. The breach was a warning shot, an ominous sign of how far the opposition was willing to go. Lily stood in the war room at Tesla headquarters, staring at the screen in front of her. Mark and Elon were beside her, both analyzing the data from the hack. Her mind was racing, but it was clear. This was a turning point. The opposition was no longer playing by the rules. "We've got to get ahead of this," Elon said, his voice strained. "If they release this data to the public, we'll lose credibility. It's not just about the tech anymore. It's about our integrity." Lily nodded, her jaw clenched. "We need to act fast. The longer we wait, the more control they'll have. I have a feeling they're about to make a move, something big." Mark looked up from his laptop. "They've already made their move. The hackers are being used as pawns. There's someone much bigger pulling the strings." Lily's phone buzzed with an incoming message. She opened it and froze. It was from William Carter. "I've received an offer," the message read. "It's from them, the same people who've been pulling the strings behind the scenes. They want to negotiate. They're offering a deal." Lily's heart skipped a beat. She read the message again, her mind racing. The offer was clear. Join forces with the fossil fuel giants, and the renewable energy movement would gain access to unlimited resources. But it came with a price. Give up the fight for a true energy revolution and instead work within the existing system, aligning with the very companies they had been exposing. It was a classic tactic, the carrot and the stick. Either they played along, became part of the establishment, and kept the fight quiet, or they rejected the deal and risked a full-scale battle that could destroy everything. Lily felt a cold chill run through her. The offer was tempting, in a way. The resources they could get from such an alliance could speed up their work exponentially. They would have the support of the biggest players in the energy sector, meaning unlimited access to funding, manpower, and infrastructure. They could launch their technology on a global scale, with the backing of governments, investors, and corporations. But the cost was steep. Joining forces with these powers would mean compromising their values, putting profits over people, and silencing the very voices that had been calling for systemic change. It would be the end of everything she had stood for, the end of transparency, the end of innovation, and the end of true reform. She paced the room, her fingers trembling. Elon was watching her, sensing the tension in the air. "Lily, we don't have to answer right away," he said quietly. This is a major decision. We've come this far because we've stayed true to our mission. But we also know that sometimes survival means making hard choices. Lily stopped pacing, her mind racing. The decision seemed impossible. If they rejected the deal, they would risk losing everything, perhaps even their freedom. The pressure from the fossil fuel giants was already overwhelming, and it was clear they would stop at nothing to maintain control. But if they accepted the deal— "No," she whispered. "We can't compromise. Not now. Not after everything we've built. We've shown the world that change is possible. And if we give in now, we're just as bad as they are." Elon nodded slowly. "I agree. It's time to make our stand." As the decision was made, the world began to close in on them. The hack had shaken the public's confidence, and the media was pouncing on every piece of negative information they could find. The public narrative was shifting from a story of hope and revolution to one of uncertainty and scandal. Lily's team had to act fast. They increased security on all fronts and began implementing tighter protocols to protect their data. At the same time, they ramped up their efforts to publicly discredit the fossil fuel lobby, releasing key documents they had unearthed during their investigation, detailing bribery and illegal lobbying efforts by the industry. But despite their best efforts, the pressure from the opposition was mounting. There were public hearings in Congress, where industry-backed lawmakers called for investigations into Lily and Elon, accusing them of monopolistic practices and exploiting public sentiment for profit. Their credibility was being questioned at every turn, and they could feel the walls closing in. In the midst of this storm, Lily received a call. It was William Carter again, his voice heavy with worry. "They're coming after you, Lily," he said urgently. "They've made a move, and it's not just media pressure anymore. They've orchestrated a full-blown political assault. They've got their allies in Washington pushing a bill that could dismantle everything you've worked for." Lily's blood ran cold. The bill, if passed, would make it nearly impossible for her technology to be adopted on a global scale. It would impose heavy regulations on any new energy systems, effectively freezing innovation and ensuring that the status quo would remain for decades. In the following days, Lily and her team began organizing a counteroffensive. They knew they needed more than just legal maneuvers. They needed public outcry. They needed to show the world that the people had the power, that the fight for the future of energy was not about profits or politics, but about humanity's survival. Lily's campaign, "The Future Is Now," went into overdrive. They organized global protests, using social media to rally millions of voices in cities around the world. It was a peaceful movement, but it was fierce. People were showing up in droves to demand that their leaders prioritize renewable energy over corporate interests, and the media couldn't ignore it. The tide of public opinion was starting to shift, but just as things began to look promising, a new threat emerged. The opposition had resorted to a new form of warfare, hacking. This time, they had targeted the protest movement itself. Using fake social media accounts and bots, they spread disinformation, trying to turn public sentiment against Lily's campaign. They fabricated stories of violence at protests, manipulated videos to show false aggression, and tried to discredit the entire movement as a front for eco-terrorists. Lily watched in horror as the narrative began to slip out of their control. Could they still win this fight? The forces against them were more formidable than she had ever imagined. But there was one thing she knew for sure: they couldn't back down. Not now. The fight between corporate interests and environmental progress is always a difficult one. If you were in Lily's shoes, would you risk everything to stay true to your values? Or would you consider making compromises to ensure progress? What would you do? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The final confrontation was coming, and Lily was ready to face it head-on. Whatever the cost, she would fight for the future she believed in, for everyone. The media war had intensified to the point where every new headline felt like a blow. Lily had fought her whole life to bring clean energy to the world, but now, it wasn't just about the technology. It was about the very soul of the movement. Everything was on the line. The world was watching, and the pressure was unbearable. Every protest, every speech, every piece of new legislation seemed to bring them closer to a precipice. The opposition had begun to play dirty, spreading lies, manipulating the truth, and using every tool at their disposal to discredit the movement. In a darkened office miles away from the headlines, Charles Windsor, one of the most powerful lobbyists in the world, watched the chaos unfold. He was a man who had spent decades pulling the strings of the global energy sector, and for the first time in his career, he felt threatened. But Windsor was not someone who would go down quietly. He had a plan, one that would ultimately prove that no one could challenge the status quo without facing grave consequences. Windsor had always known how to turn a crisis into an opportunity. He wasn't worried about the protests. He wasn't even worried about the global media's growing skepticism toward the fossil fuel industry. What concerned him more was the growing popularity of Lily's movement. If she and Elon succeeded in shifting the global energy market towards sustainable sources, it would shake the very foundations of the empire he had helped build. He needed to get rid of Lily, for good. Meanwhile, Lily was doing everything she could to stay ahead of the storm. The protests were getting bigger, the global demand for clean energy was growing stronger, and she had allies everywhere. But the enemy was just as determined, and they were getting smarter. Elon had been speaking with his inner circle of allies, investors, scientists, world leaders, to lay the groundwork for what would come next, a massive unveiling. "We have to turn the tables," Elon said to Lily one afternoon, as they sat in a quiet room at Tesla's headquarters. "If we can get the right people on board with us, we can expose the entire system. The truth is our greatest weapon. We've just been sitting on it too long." Lily was listening intently. "What exactly are you proposing? What if we reveal just how deep this conspiracy goes?" Elon said, his eyes gleaming with determination. "What if we show the world who's really behind this? Who's been pulling the strings to keep the fossil fuel industry alive? Not just the lobbyists, but the corporate and political elites who are profiting from keeping the system broken." Lily's mind raced. The idea was risky, but it could be the game-changer they needed. "We can't just release documents or do another interview," she said. "We need to prove it, to show that it's not just some conspiracy theory, but a well-coordinated, multi-billion-dollar effort to maintain control of the global energy market. We need to force their hand." Lily's team, alongside Elon's trusted advisors, began working on a digital weapon, a data leak so powerful that it would be impossible for the world to ignore. They had been collecting evidence of corporate bribery, illegal lobbying, environmental violations, and political manipulation for months. Now, they had everything they needed to expose the truth to the public. The plan was simple: launch the data in waves, carefully timed to coincide with key moments in the media cycle, moments that would make the world take notice. If they did this right, they could destroy the fossil fuel industry's narrative in a matter of days. But there was one issue. The moment they pulled the trigger, there would be no going back. It would be a war, not just between industries, but between two visions of the world. Lily had no illusions about the consequences. She had prepared for this moment her whole life, but she knew it would test everything she believed in. The night before the planned data leak, Lily couldn't sleep. She sat by the window of her penthouse, looking out over the city that felt more like a battlefield every day. The weight of the decision hung heavy on her shoulders, but she wasn't afraid. If anything, she felt a sense of clarity that she hadn't felt before. Her phone buzzed, and she saw a text message from Elon. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" Lily typed back, her fingers moving without hesitation. "Yes, this is it. The world will know the truth." But just as she was about to put the phone down, another message popped up. This one was from William Carter. "Lily, I've received information from a very reliable source. They're planning something big tomorrow. Be careful." Lily's heart skipped a beat. What was this? Another twist in the game? She stared at the message, uncertainty creeping in. She replied, "What exactly are they planning?" William's message was short: a counterstrike, a political maneuver. They want to destroy the leak before it goes public. Don't trust anyone, especially not the press. Lily felt a chill run down her spine. She knew the opposition would do whatever it took to stop them, but this was different. This wasn't just about discrediting her. It was about eliminating her entire movement. The next morning, Lily sat at her desk, staring at the screen, her finger hovering over the send button. Elon was already in another room, monitoring the situation, ready to deploy the data once they were certain everything was in place. Everything was in position. The world was about to see the truth, laid bare before their eyes. But Lily couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Then, the screen in front of her flashed. A warning. The data leak had already been intercepted. Before she could react, her phone buzzed again. It was Elon. It's happening. They're shutting it down. It's too late. They know we're coming. The ground beneath Lily's feet seemed to tremble. This wasn't just a leak. It was a declaration of war. She had thought they were in control, but now, it seemed like the counterattack had already begun. Elon's message ended with a chilling line. They're coming for us, Lily. We need to be ready. Lily's mind raced. She quickly understood that the real battle had just begun. The leak would not happen on their terms. Instead, the opposition was now on the offensive, using their political power, media influence, and legal forces to cover up the truth and shift public opinion. But Lily wouldn't let them win. Not this time. Not after everything she had sacrificed. With the support of her loyal allies, William Carter, the global protests, and the millions of voices calling for change, Lily knew it was time for the final confrontation. There was no turning back now. The gloves were off. The stage was set. The truth was about to come out, no matter the cost. And the world was about to witness the ultimate showdown. The digital storm had begun. Lily knew, with an unsettling certainty, that the data leak, the one they had worked so tirelessly to expose, was no longer under their control. The opposition, powerful and ruthless as it was, had countered swiftly. They had known this day would come. They had anticipated every move. But Lily wouldn't back down. Not now. Lily's phone buzzed again, a flurry of text coming through. It was from William Carter. It's worse than we thought. They've begun an all-out digital counterattack. You're not just up against the lobbyists anymore. It's the entire government machinery they've mobilized. Watch your back. Lily's heart sank. She had expected resistance, but not this level of coordinated force. They were playing a different game now, one where the stakes were higher and the weapons were far more insidious. She glanced at Elon, who had been pacing the room for the last 10 minutes, his usual confidence now replaced by a rare look of concern. They're scrambling everything, Elon said, his voice tight. The data leaks. We can't let them sweep this under the rug. We need to go on the offensive now. Lily nodded, her resolve hardening. We can't afford to wait any longer. They've already shown us they'll do anything to protect their empire. It's time to make sure the world sees what's really going on. Lily and Elon quickly pulled together a plan. It was time to go public, completely public. The leaks would not just be dispersed online. They would be broadcast in real time to the entire world. They had secured a secret partnership with a major media network who was willing to take a massive risk to support their cause. The network would air the truth in an unfiltered, live broadcast. But the risks were enormous. The opposition would stop at nothing to prevent this broadcast from airing. It was only a matter of time before they tried to shut down the signal, silence the voices of dissent, and try to frame Lily and Elon as enemies of the state. The world has to see this, Lily. They need to know who we're really up against, Elon said. His usual brilliance had a sharp edge to it now. He was prepared to do whatever it took. If we can't expose this, everything we've worked for will be buried. You can't give them a chance to silence us. As the broadcast went live, something strange began to happen. People everywhere started tuning in. Not just the usual supporters, but skeptics, haters, and even the media that had been attacking Lily and Elon for months. The network had gone to great lengths to secure the stream, but they knew this wasn't just about sharing data. It was about changing hearts and minds. The images on the screen were graphic, direct, and unambiguous. Documents, emails, and phone call recordings. Powerful, high-ranking individuals in the fossil fuel industry discussing bribery, manipulation, and how they had worked with politicians to suppress renewable energy in order to protect their profits. It was a damning expose, and the weight of its revelations hit harder than anyone had anticipated. Lily's voice cut through the broadcast as she addressed the world, her words clear and unwavering. The time for secrets is over. The systems of control that have held us back for generations, those systems are about to crumble. We have evidence, and we will not stop until the truth is known. No amount of money, no amount of political power can silence us anymore. This fight is for all of us. Immediately after the broadcast went live, the world erupted. Social media platforms were flooded with reactions. Some people were in awe, sharing the footage and rallying around the cause. Others, particularly those in positions of power, began to push back hard. The attacks came swiftly, from every direction. The media began questioning the authenticity of the leak. Is this just another hack? A setup? They asked. Politicians began denouncing the broadcast, accusing Lily and Elon of attempting to undermine national security and incite unrest. The legal threats started pouring in. Lawsuits from every angle, trying to shut down their operations, seize their assets, and stop the movement in its tracks. But what surprised Lily the most wasn't the backlash. It was the unexpected support, a groundswell of voices who were now waking up to the reality of what was at stake. People from all walks of life, scientists, teachers, activists, students, even business leaders, began to speak out. The truth was taking hold, and there was no turning back. As the world reacted, it became clear that something had shifted. Public opinion had started to tilt in their favor. The protests had grown larger, with millions of people taking to the streets across the globe, demanding action. Governments, under pressure, were starting to come to the table for negotiations. Lily knew that they were on the verge of something huge. But as the movement gained momentum, she could feel the opposition closing in. It was only a matter of time before they'd attempt to discredit the truth in even more brutal ways, perhaps even resorting to violence. Lily had seen how far the powers that be would go to protect their profits, and she didn't trust them to back down now. It happened faster than she expected. A coordinated attack. The opposition had targeted Tesla's main facilities, trying to hack into their systems and sabotage their operations. Tesla's servers had been compromised, and sensitive data had been stolen. The goal was clear. They wanted to create chaos, to destabilize everything they had built. But they underestimated Elon and his team. Tesla had prepared for cyber attacks, and their security protocols were some of the best in the industry. They were able to regain control of the servers within hours. However, the message was clear. The opposition would not hesitate to use every dirty tactic they had at their disposal to bring them down. Elon was furious. They're scared, Lily. Really scared. They know they're losing control, and they'll do anything to stop us. We can't let them win. Lily's response was simple. Then let's make sure they lose for good. With the stolen data in their hands, Lily and Elon made a bold decision. They would release everything, the full extent of the fossil fuel industry's corruption, political manipulation, and environmental crimes. They would no longer hide behind fragments or leaks. They would bring it all to light. They reached out to the global media. It was time to take control of the narrative, to use every channel at their disposal to ensure the truth reached every corner of the world. If the opposition wanted a war, they would get one. But Lily knew one thing for certain. The people were on their side. The truth was on their side. If you were in Lily's position, would you risk everything to expose the truth, even knowing that the opposition might resort to violence or even greater tactics of deception? How far would you go to ensure the world saw the corruption and manipulation behind the energy industry? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The battle was far from over, but Lily knew one thing. They were getting closer to the endgame. And no matter what, they would never stop until the truth came out. Lily could feel the weight of the world on her shoulders. The digital war was escalating, and their efforts to expose the corruption at the heart of the fossil fuel industry had reached a tipping point. But the fight wasn't just about releasing data anymore. It was about maintaining control, managing the backlash, and making sure the world stayed focused on the truth. In the days following the release of the comprehensive data, the media landscape had become a battlefield. The opposition's allies and major news outlets worked tirelessly to spin the narrative, calling Lily and Elon's movement dangerous and un-American. They labeled them radicals, claiming their actions would ruin the global economy and bring about widespread instability. But despite their best efforts, something was shifting. People weren't just passively accepting the stories they were being told. Instead, the grassroots movement that Lily and Elon had built began to snowball. Social media, where the opposition's control was weaker, became a haven for people calling out the lies and demanding accountability. #ExposeTheTruth was trending globally. The fossil fuel giants couldn't ignore it any longer. For the first time, it wasn't just about numbers. It was about hearts and minds. People were waking up, and the world was starting to turn against the very system that had held it hostage for so long. Amid the chaos, new alliances began to form. Former rivals within the tech world, environmental groups, and even some political figures who had once supported the fossil fuel industry now found themselves standing alongside Lilly and Elon. They understood that this wasn't just about clean energy or green technologies. It was about freedom. The freedom to choose a future that didn't rely on deceit, manipulation, and environmental destruction. One of the most unexpected allies was Senator Valerie Hughes, a longtime conservative politician from the heart of the American oil state of Texas. Hughes had been a vocal critic of the clean energy movement, but after seeing the evidence of corruption, she realized how deeply she had been misled. In a public address, Senator Hughes shocked the political world when she declared, "I was wrong, and I won't make that mistake again. The system that has been built on fossil fuels for decades is corrupt, and the only way to protect our future is to embrace renewable energy." Her endorsement was a turning point for many. It wasn't just a high-profile political figure speaking out. It was a conservative senator from Texas, the heart of the fossil fuel industry. Her words carried weight, and they made a powerful statement. This wasn't about politics. It was about survival. Despite the growing support, the opposition wasn't backing down. In fact, they were ramping up their efforts to crush the movement. A series of high-profile legal attacks were launched against Tesla, accusing the company of fraud and data manipulation. Behind the scenes, the fossil fuel giants worked through shadow organizations to funnel money into lobby groups and political campaigns, trying to discredit both Elon and Lilly at every turn. Then came the most dangerous move yet: cyber warfare. Tesla's systems were once again targeted, this time with more sophisticated methods. A large portion of their renewable energy research and development data was stolen, and rumors began to circulate that the entire solar grid initiative was compromised. Lilly's heart sank when she heard the news. If the data was leaked, it could undo everything they had worked for. All the progress they had made could come crashing down in an instant. But Elon wasn't going to let that happen. "We need to act fast," Elon said, his voice firm. "This isn't just about Tesla anymore. This is about the future. And we're not going to let them destroy it." Elon's team immediately began working to counter the hack, using their advanced AI security systems to trace the cyber attack back to its source. Meanwhile, Lilly's team prepared to make a bold move. They had a secret weapon, a plan that had been in the works for months. It was time to take the battle directly to the heart of the fossil fuel industry. Lilly and Elon called in their closest allies, including Senator Hughes, who now had a personal stake in the fight. They devised a strategy. If they could expose the dirty financial deals between major energy corporations and political leaders, it would be a game changer. They would launch another data leak. But this time, they would go even further. "We have to show them that the power structure isn't just corrupt," Lilly said, her voice quiet but resolute. "It's rigged, from the top down. We need to take down the people who profit from the destruction of our planet, no matter how high they are." The night before the final leak, Lilly couldn't sleep. Her mind raced with thoughts of the consequences, both for herself and for the world. The data they were about to release would be explosive. It would show the world how deeply entrenched the fossil fuel industry was in the political landscape, how corporate greed had been prioritized over human life and the planet's survival. But Lilly knew it had to be done. The truth had to be heard. The next morning, with the world watching, they launched their final blow. The leak was timed perfectly. Media outlets around the world were ready, and within minutes, the contents of the leak flooded news cycles globally. The documents revealed millions in bribes paid to politicians, backdoor deals between energy giants and world leaders, and evidence of how the fossil fuel industry had knowingly manipulated environmental data to suppress climate change solutions. The industry's dark secrets were now exposed for the world to see. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Governments scrambled to respond. Some defended the industry, but many were forced to act. Public opinion had shifted irrevocably. The voices of the people, millions of them, had grown too loud to ignore. Across the globe, citizens took to the streets, demanding justice, accountability, and change. The stock market for the biggest fossil fuel companies took a major hit as investors pulled out in droves, fearing what would come next. For the first time, clean energy was no longer seen as a niche market. It was the future. And the old guard, the ones who had profited for decades, could no longer stop the tide from turning. But the opposition wasn't finished. They didn't just roll over. Behind closed doors, they were plotting their next move. But it was clear now, Lilly and Elon had changed the game. They had exposed the corruption that had once been hidden in the shadows. "We've won a battle," Lilly said, looking out at the crowd of supporters that had gathered in front of Tesla's headquarters. "But the war is far from over. The world is waking up, but we need to keep pushing. The fight for our future, for clean energy, for truth, will continue. And we won't stop until the last lie is exposed." Her words were met with a thunderous cheer. The people had spoken, and the momentum was theirs. The path ahead was still uncertain, but one thing was clear. They had lit the spark. The world was changing, and they were leading the charge. The tide had shifted. The world had begun to realize the extent of the corruption that had long been concealed, but the battle was far from over. Lilly and Elon were now facing the full force of the opposition, and this time, it wasn't just about data or media coverage. It was about the final, reckoning confrontation that would determine the future of both their movement and the planet. Lilly and Elon had exposed the dark underbelly of the fossil fuel industry, its manipulation of political systems, its financial corruption, and its calculated attacks on clean energy initiatives. The data had gone global, and millions had begun to rise up against the industry's power. But the opposition was far from defeated. The fossil fuel giants, backed by their political allies, were no longer just playing defense, they were waging war. Behind the scenes, there were whispered conversations in dark boardrooms, backroom deals being made with politicians, and a concerted effort to undermine the movement at all costs. The stakes were higher than ever. Elon, always the optimist, had kept the focus on moving forward, developing new technologies, and pushing the boundaries of renewable energy. But even he knew that there were limits to how far they could push without risking it all. "They won't just fade into the background," Elon warned one evening as the sun set over the Tesla headquarters. "We've exposed the truth, but they'll try to crush us before we can finish what we started. We need to be ready for the next move." Lilly felt the weight of those words. She had always known that bringing the truth to light wouldn't be easy, but now the stakes had reached a breaking point. She turned to Elon. "What are we going to do now? How do we finish this?" she asked. The answer came from an unexpected source, Senator Valerie Hughes. After her shocking endorsement of the movement, she had become one of the most influential political figures in the fight for change. Her support had opened doors to new allies in both government and business. And now, as the opposition's threats grew more serious, Senator Hughes had a bold suggestion. "We need to hit them where it hurts," she said during a private meeting. "If they can't control the energy industry, they'll lose everything. But they still have control over the financial system, over how clean energy gets funded. If we can break that, if we can get public control of renewable energy, we win. They can't fight back against people power." It was a risky proposition, but Lilly and Elon understood the importance. To truly change the system, they would need to break the financial chokehold the fossil fuel industry had on global energy markets. It meant leveraging public funds, creating grassroots-led energy co-ops, and securing legislation that would guarantee renewable energy access for everyone. But it would take a monumental push to get the necessary laws passed, and they needed to act before the opposition could stop them. With their plan in motion, the next phase was clear: lobbying. If they could get enough public support behind the push for clean energy reform, it would force politicians to take action. Senator Hughes used her political clout to rally a coalition of lawmakers, while Lilly and Elon worked tirelessly behind the scenes to garner support from businesses, environmental groups, and even citizens who had seen firsthand how the fossil fuel industry had manipulated the system for so long. But the opposition wasn't going to sit idle. They unleashed a massive campaign to discredit the movement and pressure lawmakers into rejecting the proposal. Ads flooded the airwaves, claiming that moving away from fossil fuels would lead to job losses, economic collapse, and energy shortages. They painted Lilly and Elon as radicals who were willing to sacrifice American prosperity for the sake of a pipe dream. The attack was relentless, But Lilly and Elon had anticipated it. They countered with facts, data, and stories of communities that had successfully transitioned to renewable energy. They highlighted the jobs created by the clean energy sector, the technological advancements they had made, and the success stories from countries around the world that had already embraced the change. Still, it wasn't enough. The fossil fuel giants had billions at their disposal, and they weren't afraid to use them. The situation reached a boiling point when Tesla's factories were targeted in an unprecedented attack. This time, it wasn't a simple cyber hack. The opposition had gone to extreme lengths to sabotage the clean energy giant. Tesla's solar panel production was halted when critical infrastructure was destroyed in an explosion at one of their key manufacturing plants. Lilly and Elon were devastated by the news. The sabotage was calculated, cruel, and deliberate. They knew this was a message from the opposition, a warning. But it also showed them something more. They were winning. If the opposition was willing to go to these lengths to stop them, it meant that they were threatening the very heart of the industry. Elon stood in the wreckage of the plant, his fists clenched. "They think this is going to break us," he said, his voice low. "But they're wrong. We're not backing down. We're going to use their attack, as fuel. We'll push even harder." Lilly watched him, her determination growing. "We'll turn this around. We'll show the world that nothing can stop us." The attack on Tesla became a turning point. The media coverage was massive, and this time, the story wasn't just about corporate greed or environmental destruction. It was about resilience. It was about the people who had been fighting for a better future and who were now even more determined to see their vision realized. As public outcry grew, momentum began to shift in their favor. Senator Hughes led the charge on Capitol Hill, calling for a full investigation into the sabotage of Tesla's operations. The government, under pressure from both sides, had no choice but to step in. They called for hearings. They listened to the testimonies of scientists, business leaders, and everyday citizens who had been affected by the fossil fuel industry's manipulation. It was clear. The world was ready for change. Lilly and Elon's message was simple but powerful. The future is clean energy. The future is people power. The final victory came when the Clean Energy Act was passed in a historic vote. It was the most comprehensive energy reform in modern history, and it marked the beginning of a new era, an era in which renewable energy would no longer be stifled by corporate greed and political influence. For the first time in history, public ownership of clean energy infrastructure was a reality. The fossil fuel industry's grip on the global energy market had been broken, and Tesla was poised to lead the charge into a sustainable future. Lilly and Elon stood together on the steps of the Capitol building, surrounded by their supporters, as the news of the victory spread. The battle had been long and hard, but they had won. What do you think is the most important factor in achieving real change in society? Is it technology, policy, or the will of the people? What kind of changes do you think we need to make to ensure a cleaner, more sustainable world? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Together, we can shape a better future. As Lilly and Elon looked out over the sea of faces, they knew this was just the beginning. The future had changed, and they had played a pivotal role in making it happen. Their victory was a beacon of hope, not just for the future of clean energy, but for the possibility of a world where truth, transparency, and the power of the people could triumph over greed and corruption. The dust had finally settled. The movement that had started as a small spark of rebellion, a desperate plea for change, had grown into something uncontainable. The fight for clean energy, transparency, and justice had been won. But now, it was time to look ahead and see what came next. The battle was over, but the future they'd fought for was just beginning. The day after the passage of the Clean Energy Act, the world seemed different. The news was filled with stories of celebration. Communities around the world lighting up with clean, affordable energy. The stock market had reacted positively, with a surge in investments in green technologies. Businesses were eager to tap into the new clean energy economy, and governments began enacting policies to encourage renewable development. But amid all the progress, there was an undeniable truth. While the fossil fuel giants had been dealt a crushing blow, they had not been completely vanquished. The industry still held power in many parts of the world, and it wouldn't give up without a fight. Some countries, particularly those with deep ties to oil and gas, resisted the shift to renewable energy. Yet, the global momentum was undeniable. People had demanded change, and the system had been forced to bend. Elon Musk stood before a crowd in San Francisco, the city that had become the birthplace of his dreams. The crowd gathered outside Tesla's headquarters, eager to hear from the man who had helped reshape the future. But this time, it wasn't just about technology, it was about legacy. "I've spent my life thinking about Mars," Elon began, his voice calm but resolute. "And while the dream of colonizing another planet is as thrilling as ever, what we've achieved here, on Earth, matters more than anything I could have ever imagined." He paused, looking out over the crowd. "What we've done, together, is nothing short of historic. We've changed the way we think about energy, about the planet, and about our collective future. But this is just the beginning. Our task now is to make sure this revolution doesn't just stay within our borders. This is a global effort." Lily stood in the background, watching as Elon spoke. Her heart swelled with pride, but also with a sense of anticipation. The work wasn't done. The political landscape had changed, but the world was far from fully embracing the vision they had fought for. She stepped forward as the applause for Elon died down, and the crowd turned their attention to her. The energy in the air was electric, full of hope and potential. She had become a symbol of the fight for truth, for accountability, and for the kind of future that many thought was out of reach. "I never set out to be a leader," Lily said, her voice steady, but filled with emotion. "I started as someone who just wanted to make a difference, a small change that might ripple out and grow. But what we've done together is far beyond what I ever imagined. We've shown the world that one person can make a difference, but that together, we are unstoppable." The crowd erupted in cheers. Lily smiled, her eyes scanning the faces of people who had stood by her side, people who had believed in the cause even when it seemed like a long shot. She continued, "The road ahead isn't easy. We still have challenges to overcome, but we are a new generation, and we are ready to lead. We will continue to fight, not just for the future of our planet, but for the future of our children, our communities, and our world." With the passage of the Clean Energy Act, a global shift began to take shape. Nations that had once been reluctant to embrace green technology saw the undeniable benefits. International coalitions formed, sharing resources, knowledge, and expertise to tackle the climate crisis head-on. Elon's vision for sustainable cities, powered entirely by renewable energy, began to take root. Countries like China, India, and Brazil, who had long been beholden to the fossil fuel industry, started working with the West on shared energy grids, allowing for cleaner, cheaper power to flow seamlessly across borders. In Africa, clean energy initiatives flourished. Solar power installations powered rural communities, and the first major green tech hub in Nairobi became a beacon of innovation in the developing world. The impact was revolutionary. Africa, long left behind in the energy race, was now leading in clean energy. Lily's grassroots movement grew into a worldwide network of activists, scientists, and entrepreneurs who continued to push for change. They were no longer fighting against a specific industry. They were creating a new world from the ground up. The people now had the tools and the power to shape the future. With the passing of the Clean Energy Act, the transition to a global renewable energy economy was no longer just a distant dream. It was real. Tesla led the way with its solar roof systems and battery storage solutions, but other companies followed suit. It wasn't just about Tesla anymore. It was about the collective effort of every person, company, and nation committed to a cleaner, sustainable future. But perhaps the most important change was how energy itself was viewed. It was no longer something controlled by a few powerful entities. It was a universal resource, accessible to all, and managed by the people for the people. For Lily, this was the realization of the dream she had first shared with Elon all those years ago. A world where people were no longer at the mercy of powerful corporations, but empowered to create a better future for themselves and their communities. In the final moments of the ceremony, with the world watching, Elon turned to Lily, a sense of gratitude in his eyes. "We did it," he said quietly. "Together, we did it." Lily nodded, her gaze firm. "This is just the beginning," she replied. "The fight continues, and it's not over until we're certain that everyone, everywhere, has access to a sustainable, just future. She looked out over the crowd, knowing that the legacy they were building was bigger than both of them. It wasn't about Tesla, or even about Elon and Lily. It was about the people, the future, and the power of truth and unity. As the crowd cheered and the cameras flashed, Lily and Elon stood side by side, knowing that the world they had just helped create was not just a dream, it was a reality. And in the years to come, their story would be told not just as the story of two people who changed the world, but of a movement that reshaped the future for generations to come. For the first time in history, the world was united by a single goal: to create a sustainable, just, and prosperous future for all. And with that, a new chapter began. One where the future was clean, the people were empowered, and the legacy of hope was eternal. Now that the world has changed, how do you think we can continue to build upon this victory? What role do you think you play in shaping the future of clean energy? Join the conversation and share your thoughts below. Together, we can keep pushing for a brighter, more sustainable world for everyone. As the crowd's cheers faded into the distance, one thing was clear. The revolution was not just about technology or policy. It was about the heart of humanity, the courage to fight for what's right, and the unshakable belief that the best way forward is together. The world had finally learned that nothing was impossible when the people came together for a common cause.